For September 24th, 2019. A couple of announcements to start this evening's meeting. You might notice that I am not Bernard Green, although I am equally attractive. He is not here tonight. He's got a previous engagement, and actually at this very moment he's at the NETA community meeting. So I will be chairing this evening, trying to do a good job in his stead. I want to report a little bit of news from executive session. As you may know, we had a conversation this evening about the recent land court decision involving Hancock Village, the case Hancock Village versus the town of Brookline in regards to the NCD. The Select Board has declined to appeal that case and is looking to staff for next steps. So more to come there. But we've decided not to appeal that decision of the land court. I'll kick off announcements by saying that a number of us were at Brookline Day this past weekend. I always think it's a great event, and it brings the community together, residents and businesses, nonprofits and town departments, and beautiful weather has been the tradition for the past, couple of years, and I appreciate everybody that worked so hard to bring together such a successful event. Especially Ms. Galentine and Ms. Jackson and the Park and Rec Commission. So thank you to everybody involved. Other announcements from folks? Select Person Heller.
I have a couple of announcements in the area of sustainability. This morning, the Chamber of Commerce, along with Mothers Out Front and Climate Action Brookline, and their organizer was Dave Gladstone, who is not only a chamber member, but also a member of our Select Board Climate Action Committee. They hosted a first workshop called, the brand name, if you will, is Climate in Brookline. Climate is everybody's business. And it was focused on businesses in Brookline, a very, very good turnout. Mr. Fernandez was there as well. We really had some excellent presentations on issues like opt-up and renewable energy and green restaurants, composting, efforts at providing information to businesses. We heard from Eversource on rebates and programs that benefit commercial establishments. So it was a really, really good meeting. There probably will be another one. I believe David told me it would be in March. But I would encourage everyone to read about it. Probably there'll be some coverage, let's hope, in the tab. And it was exciting. It's a demonstration of how interested this community is in issues of climate change and sustainability. In addition, Zoe Lynn, who also made a presentation this morning, told us about a new initiative, and she's here, so I'll ask her to come up and talk about it.
Hi, I'm Zoe Lynn, the Town Sustainability Program Administrator. I assume Nancy's also referring to the brand yes. announcement. Mm-hmm. And so what this is just the early stages of an announcement. We're calling all artists, graphic designers, marketing professionals, brand developers, writers, language gurus, and creative individuals to help us develop our first sustainability brand, our holistic sustainability brand for the town of Brookline that will represent our collective efforts for an to achieve an environmentally sustainable future. You can contact me for more information. The contest will start sometime in October. There will be prizes for the a conceptual draft logo that is selected, or a draft tagline of $500, or if someone's so ambitious and talented to deliver a full conceptual brand to the town, an award of $2,000. Details are going to be spelled out over the next few weeks. They'll be put on a website. That website is our town website, www.brooklinema.gov / the number 1714 / sustainability-brand-contest. When more information is available, it will be on that space, and I think that's the heart of the announcement.
Great. Thank you. Select Person Fernandez.
Sure. Along the same lines, just want to give you a heads up. This Saturday, the Brookline Green Space Alliance is hosting a walk at Riverway Park. There will be a major restoration that's coming to that park. You'll be able to take a 1-mile walk with a board member who's familiar with the history of the park and also the Army Corps of Engineers Muddy River Restoration Project and bridge rebuilding that is going to help renew this important link to the Emerald Necklace. It is this Saturday from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. And you can, for more information into RSVP, reach out to info@brooklinegreenspace.org.
Great.
So I don't know if people have walked through Coolidge Corner and seen these signs. They're called SUFA signs. We approved the pilot for those signs that communicate some local advertising, but also allow us to post our public meetings on the sign. They're doing an official launch on Thursday morning at 10 at 248 Harvard Street that Mr. Fernandez and I will be attending.
Great. Next up is public comment. As I think most are aware, this board has a policy of allowing public comment for up to 15 minutes at our meetings. I've got 3 people signed up, so 15 minutes. First up is Regina Frawley.
Thank you, Regina Frawley from Precinct 16. Great announcement that you may not have heard, I think it just came out. The Longwood Dental Group is offering veterans and active duty military free fillings, exams, and cleanings in October. The phone number is 617-566-5445. I think this is wonderful, and I hope you'll inform Bill, so if he doesn't know already, and he may well, but if he doesn't, he can do the outreach to all the vets that live in town and the former vets. That's important. There's a lot of old-timers who were veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Byrne is up next.
Hi, Tim Byrne from Pleasant Street and Coolidge Corner, and associated with a group called Concerned Citizens of Coolidge Corner. We spoke last week about our concerns regarding the 1351 Beacon Street. I said I would get back with a little bit of information. I'll be brief. I do want to thank you. We asked for perhaps the meeting notes for the community engagement, and it's a little complicated, but it sounds like that went to the Cannabis Commission, and you have a different process. But I believe the town administrator did mention that he would try to get those notes. So if you could get the notes from Sanctuary, if they're willing to give it to us, it'd be interesting just to see how robust the engagement was. Like, just the people showed up and did kind of get the information. The other thing I did want to mention was that the tab mentioned that we had 87 people on our petition, and as of, I think, last night, we have about 1,000 people. So it just indicates that there is a kind of a growing opposition, at least concern about the coming dispensary, and so just to be aware for you people that Coolidge Corner has, a certain set of opinions that are growing about it. I don't know exactly the numbers, but just to let you know that they do seem to be growing in terms of opposition. We have some people petitioning, and I think there's the next speaker is going to speak about her experience at the Lawrence School, speaking to some mothers there. So that's all I had to say, but thank you for listening.
Thank you. And Lillian Lagos is up next.
Good evening. Yesterday afternoon, I picked up my grandson at school, and I had some petitions for the marijuana pot. And within a half an hour, I got about 50 parents that were flabbergasted that they didn't know what was going on at Coolidge Corner. They signed the petition. They thanked me for doing it. I'm a grandmother, so I'm just concerned about the kids. Whatever money you make from the marijuana sale, I hope you invest it in the kids for their rehab, for the psychological problem that they're going to have. Adults can smoke it, but this is a very congested area with young children. They walk. If we're going to give it to them on a silver platter to take the marijuana, and then whatever money the town makes, it's going to be gone for rehab. I hope you don't want that. I don't want that. I hope nobody wants that, okay? I have a statement, but it's no word. Do you want me to read a statement that I wrote?
Why don't you leave it with us, and we'll circulate it, and we can read it
Okay.
after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that wishes to give public comment this evening? Okay, we'll move on to our main agenda. The first item is the question of approving a change order related to the Brookline High School project. Mr. Masak.
Ray Masak, Building Department. This is one of the many pre-GMP packages that we bring before you to keep the project moving forward in an expeditious manner. And this
Why don't you
is-
pull the mic up a little bit, Ray?
Sorry.
Some people are having trouble hearing.
Sorry. This is for pre-GMP number 8, and this will be for concrete regarding Project A, 111 Cypress Building.
Can you, would you mind, someone pulled me to the side before I came to the select board meeting tonight and said, what is the deal with these change orders? Why do they keep appearing before the board? Can you explain the process for folks who may be either out here listening or watching at home?
So we've hired, they're not really change orders, but they are. They're called guaranteed maximum price. So you have a construction manager on board, and they're what's called early bid packages to allow the project. So such as steel, which has anything that has long lead items, we try to bring before you, such as steel, curtain wall, enabling demolition, concrete. We're trying to get as many subs on board so they can start the project rather than doing a bid process that would normally take 2 or 3 months. You break it up into distinct smaller packages and you bring the vendors on early.
Great.
And that's part of the process of having a construction manager at risk.
And to date, we're still on budget for this project, is that fair, or where are we with the?
Due to market conditions, we are always evaluating. There are budget problems on this project.
Okay.
And
Let me
we're
just say that most of these have been for increases, and that's really due to much higher than expected escalation costs. We've seen a couple of bids that have come in pretty close to the mark, but we haven't, I don't think, seen any that are under, and most have been over. So we are continually reevaluating and evaluating, what we can do to change the project so that we will, in the end, come out on budget. But this is the toughest project I've ever seen in this regard because of the climate of escalation costs in the construction market. And I believe that everyone is experiencing that. The people that I talk to who are in the development, real estate development, construction, et cetera, say that this has been the toughest market they've ever seen.
The way the CM at risk, construction manager at risk works is that they need to provide us how they bid each component. So for concrete, we only had 2 bidders, and one bidder sort of backed out. So we wound up with 1 bidder. And in the concrete world, they reached out as many bidders as they possibly could, and only 2 bidders were really interested in our project. That's for concrete. For steel, we had, I think, 3 bidders. So each component is a little bit different.
And I think the fact that we have such a small number is also indicative of how hot the market is, because everybody is so busy that they're not fighting over different projects. There's almost enough to go around, really, and more.
And that's why
because-
you have these like higher values,
Correct.
because they're like, you have to make it worth our while. So we'll throw out a number, and if you want to pay it, then we'll put some other projects on hold.
Very helpful. Thank you.
I'd be more than happy to sit down and talk to you about the process for.
Yeah, and I would say it's not just about me understanding it, but folks understanding it, because they watch and they see this, and they see this stream, and the numbers are higher and higher than they expect them to be. So I think folks hearing publicly why this is the case, I think is very helpful.
So I'll move approval of change order number 8, pre-GMP early bid package with Skanska USA Building in the amount of $4,399,529 in connection with the Brookline High School expansion project. Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. You're up again, Mr. Masak, to talk about amendment number 3 in connection, again, with the Brookline High School project related to expediter services.
So we've hired a utility expediter for both the gas and Eversource, the electric utility companies, so we can watch. Most of the gas work is complete, but for the electric work, there's a number of issues and work orders. It's called a work order to get the utility working. And the utility expediter is just to watch the process and make sure that the utility is working in good faith and moving the project forward and to meet our schedule.
So an extra set of eyes and to bird dog the utility to make this a priority and make it, keep us on schedule and keep
Yes.
them on task.
We're always trying to bird dog, especially the utilities.
Okay. I will move approval of amendment number 3, continuation of utility expediter services with Hill International in the amount of $40,000, again in connection with the Brookline High School expansion project. Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We move on to approving amendment number 12, MBTA requested design services with William Ron and Associates in connection with the high school expansion project.
Yes, as part of the new station, the MBTA has requested that one of the catenary that supports the green structures that support the lines, they've requested that we redesign one and that they will fund it. We will not start the work until we have agreement on that funding issue, but we're just moving this forward so that if they agree to the funding, we'll move ahead expeditiously.
Questions from board members? All right, I'll move approval of amendment number 12, MBTA requested design services with William Ron and Associates in the amount of $36,102 in connection with the Brookline High School expansion project. Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Question of approving contract PW 20-10 bicycle improvements on Ivy Street and St. Mary's Street. Mr. Papasturgeon.
Yes, this is contract PW 20-10. This is to install a bicycle shared lane pavement markings on St. Mary's Street and a bicycle contraflow lane on Ivy Street from St. Mary's Street to Carlton Street. We had 2 bidders for this project. It's a very small, basically a road painting project. 2 bidders, one from Highway Safety Systems and the second from Markings Incorporated. The bids were very close. We recommend award to Highway Safety Systems in the amount of $11,480.
And I'll note that there's already some bike lanes in this general vicinity. I think there's a contraflow lane down Ivy Street, I know, and down Essex Street as well. So this is a continuation of an existing route, and I think it's on the long-term vision of the Bicycle Advisory Committee's Green Routes program. So it makes a lot of sense to me. All right. I will move approval of contract PW 20-10 bicycle improvements on Ivy Street and St. Mary's Street with Highway Safety Systems of Rockland, Massachusetts in the amount of $11,480. Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We move on to a contract amendment related to the back landfill. Commissioner Papasturgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the final award for change orders for the back landfill corrective action design and permitting. This project began in FY15 and it was for the closure of the rail landfill and the reuse of that land. It was completed in December of 2018. This amendment covers additional semi-annual monitoring, reporting, design, permitting, and engineering services that will be performed by CDM Smith, that were performed by CDM Smith during the construction period, continually being performed today in an effort to issue the final reports for DEP and close the project out. So this will be the last time that I appear before you relative to this project.
I'd like to ask a question.
Absolutely.
Was the project overall within budget?
Yes.
Okay. So was it over, under, or just on right on the money?
How much under were we? I'll just say this, we'll be spending all the amount, the appropriation for this. So it was slightly under budget, but we had used the remaining balance of funds, which was very small, just to do some improvements to the transfer storage area. So.
I'll editorialize for a moment and say I was out at Skyline Park and the Lost Pond general vicinity, both in Brookline and in Newton, and had the opportunity to walk through the back landfill, and
It's fabulous,
It's
isn't
turned
it?
out beautiful.
Yes.
And I think with a couple of growing seasons and the ability for the plantings to mature, it's really going to be a great amenity. So, all right. With that, I'll move approval of amendment number 1 related to contract PW 15-15 back landfill corrective action design and permitting with CW Smith in the amount of $79,983. Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
We've got a couple of motions here, which I will take in omnibus fashion for temporary liquor licenses. There's a little bit of reading here, so just bear with me for a second. I will move the granting of a temporary wine and malt beverage license to W2K LLC for an event to be held on Friday, September 27th, 2019, for a gallery event from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. at 1404A Beacon Street. I'll move granting of the following temporary all kinds non-sales licenses to the Lars Anderson Auto Museum located at 15 Newton Street for an event on October 11th, 2019, which is a wedding reception to be held from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. On October 12th for a wedding reception from 5:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. And finally, on October 13th for a wedding reception from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. The paperwork appears to be in order, and the police department sees no reason to deny any of these temporary license applications. Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And next up, again, is Commissioner Papasturgeon, who just sat down to talk about the national accreditation of the Brookline Department of Public Works by the American Public Works Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't paying attention. You're moving so fast and efficiently. This is one of the times that I come before you that I'm very proud to appear before you. On August 10th, 2011, the Department of Public Works was awarded national accreditation by the American Public Works Association, commonly referred to as the APWA. By achieving this prestigious award, Brookline became the 71st agency in North America and the first agency in New England, New York, and New Jersey to meet the stringent requirements of accreditation. I should also note that in North America, there are currently 20,000 public works agencies. So we were the 71st agency among those to become accredited. The purpose of accreditation is to promote excellence in the operation and management of a public works agency, its programs and employees. Accreditation is the mark of professionalism that indicates that a public works agency has made the commitment to continuous improvement in the delivery of operations and services in the community it serves. Accreditation recognizes that an agency's policies, procedures, and practices have been evaluated against nationally recognized standard practices. Certification as an accredited agency is an ongoing process that requires a reaccreditation review by APWA every 4 years. The first reaccreditation review was completed successfully in 2015. I am pleased to report to the Select Board that on August 14th, 2019, the department successfully completed its second reaccreditation review and achieved full compliance. The latest edition of the APWA Public Works Management Practices Manual lists 597 standard practices for public works agencies, of which 463 were applicable to the town of Brookline. During the reaccreditation review, 154 practices were selected at random by our examiners for review and compliance. We don't know ahead of time which ones those will be. In addition, Brookline's street sweeping program, job safety manual, and cross-connection control program was selected as national model practices for other agencies to use. As the commissioner of this agency for the past 10 years, it has been a great honor for me personally to have been able to work with the best group of public works professionals ever assembled. From our division directors, Peter Ditto, Kevin Johnson, Erin Galantine, and Fred Russell, to our operations managers, Rich Stewart, Mike Bartlett, and Tom Steele, and with special recognition to Tom Brady, our conservation administrator, arborist, and also accreditation manager. He's the man of many titles. And also to Todd Corain, our transportation administrator, and Julie Piacentini, our administrative manager. A hearty well done for your dedication and devotion to ensuring that we remained a nationally recognized department. And to all the staff of the Department of Public Works, know that you are second to none. And finally, a special acknowledgement to Town Administrator Mel Kleckner, whose unwavering support for Public Works over the years has been a driving force in our quest to remain among the best of the best. So I thank you for allowing me to speak to you.
And I want to recognize you as well, Commissioner Papasturgeon. None of this happens without strong leadership and a steady hand. So thank you for your work, not only on this most recent accreditation, throughout your entire career here with the town and the Department of Public Works.
Thank you.
Just to amplify some of the things that you said that particularly struck me, the fact that Brookline was among the first in this geographic area to receive accreditation, that we've been reaccredited now twice, and that one of our really core policies, the job safety manual, was deemed a national model is really striking to me. And we ask a lot of our public works employees, particularly at this time of year as the leaves are starting to fall and members of this board are starting to think about snow, and I'm sure you are as well. It's not an easy job in the Northeast, and a lot of what DPW staff does is unheralded work, and people only recognize when things go wrong. So thank you to all you do. Thank you for your staff's dedication and perseverance, and I couldn't be more proud of the Brookline Department of Public Works.
Thank you.
Here, here.
All right. We have some public hearings scheduled for 7 p.m., and I deem it to be approximately 7 p.m.
Wow, we're actually on time.
The first public hearing is on the petition of Crown Castle NG East for permission to construct and a location for such conduits and manholes as may be necessary under the following public ways. On Beacon Street and on Powell Street. So please introduce yourself and tell us what your petition is for.
Good evening, I'm Matthew Gerard from Crown Castle. We are here to petition for new conduits on Beacon Street at the intersection of St. Paul Street for service to an existing light pole, and also for Beacon Street, Powell Street for service to both an existing light pole and a customer we have at 1180 Beacon Street. And we'll be trenching with conventional method of trenching, about 2 feet down, 18 inches wide. We'll be restoring the pavement to as good or better condition as now, and we anticipate no road closures with our traffic management, just simple lane closures.
Simple lane closure
Just the lane closure, yeah.
on Beacon?
Some on Beacon, maybe just use a turning lane kind of a thing. I believe the traffic management plan was included also, so.
When do you anticipate this work is going to take place?
We would, we're waiting for approval, so we're ready to go in the coming weeks.
So as soon as we give you a street opening permit, you're ready to go? And it's I think you said it was 3 days of work in the materials. Is that still approximately correct?
I don't anticipate anything being longer than a 3-day. For us, they're separate projects, so it might be 3 days on one, 3 days on the other.
So I'm concerned because there's a gas leak in the area. It's been documented by National Grid. It's a grade 2 leak. It appears to be around a manhole, the edge of where the project begins. And the town administrator and I have been working on a project, collaborating with other towns and cities in the area, in Greater Boston area, to encourage National Grid to work on fixing the leaks. We have a lot of leaks in this town. And it's my position that we shouldn't be opening streets for one utility and then let another one come along and open the street again. And that's disruptive to the neighbors. And we also want to encourage National Grid to fix the leak as soon as possible. We hope you'll join with us in that push. But I don't intend to vote for this until the leak is fixed. I just want you to be aware of that. It's a danger of working in Brookline. We have a huge number of leaks. We have a very aging infrastructure for pipes, and they're in pretty sorry condition. And we need to do everything we can. And they leak methane, which is a very dangerous greenhouse gas and very damaging to the environment. So we need to do everything we can to stop these leaks. And so I believe that taking this position is one which will help us promote that agenda. So.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, I'm noticing one of the things that we don't ask you on the form that we have you fill out. We talk about things like road closures, and you mentioned lane closures, but we don't ask about whether or not any bike lanes will be disrupted. Just took a look at the map there, and I see where it is. Is it likely that the bike lane there will be disrupted as part of this?
If there's a bike lane adjacent to the work zone, yes.
Yeah.
There's no question it'll be disrupted. We can, generally what we can do is we can reroute the bike lane around our work zone, and if there's room enough for both regular vehicular traffic and the bike lane, we'll do that. And then if not, we can detour too.
Okay. I think that'd be very helpful. I can imagine it'd be very difficult traveling a bike lane and then having to get around into traffic, then back over. So anything you can do to help with that would be really helpful.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Will there be a police detail?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Always, yeah.
All right, I'll move the granting of the petition of Crown Castle NG East LLC for permission to construct is this a public hearing? I'm realizing halfway through.
Yes.
Yep, so it's a public hearing. I got too far ahead of myself. Is there anybody here to speak on this application? No. So I will move granting of a petition of Crown Castle NG East LLC for permission to construct in a location for such line of conduits and manholes with the necessary cables therein under the following public way. Beacon Street, conduit northeasternly from existing manhole 15660, a distance of about 50 feet, to existing manhole 3959 at the intersection of Powell Street, and continuously northeast, a distance of approximately 16 feet, turning and running northwesterly, a distance of 73 feet, to Powell Street. On Powell Street, a conduit northwesterly from Beacon Street, a distance of about 160 feet, and one handhole, hence turning and running north-southwesterly, a distance of approximately 41 feet, to 1180 Beacon Street. And again on Beacon Street, a conduit southerly from pole 140/17 on the northeast corner with the intersection of St. Paul Street, a distance of about 131 feet, to existing manhole 3262, and one new handhole.
Okay. Could I just ask staff for a minute? if they've worked on any kind of condition to this license, which would deal with the issue of the gas leak. Mr. Papasturgeon? Or Mr. Ditto, whoever.
We acknowledge the fact that National Grid reported that there was a grade 2 leak at one of these locations. We haven't placed any conditions on the street opening permit. However, if it's the wishes of the board, we will do whatever we can do to force National Grid to repair that leak as soon as possible. I know that it was a grade 2 leak, which technically gives them a year. They had agreed to perhaps move it to 6 months, but we're going to try and see if we can't get it done sooner.
So can we attach a condition to this vote to mandate that the leak be fixed within 6 months
Well,
before,
I'm not sure that you can do that, but this
or delay the beginning of the construction for this grant of location until the leak is fixed?
Yeah, Crown Castle has no jurisdiction over National Grid. The only thing that we can do is try to force.
Well, don't they have some political pressure that they can bring to bear?
Well, I'm not sure of that.
I mean, I can't imagine the National Grid would be too happy if all of the other utilities who are going into our streets are objecting to the forced delays because National Grid won't fix the leak or hasn't fixed the leaks, which they know about.
I'm not sure about the duration of the Crown Castle project.
Our project would be 3 to 5 days tops.
Okay, well, that doesn't work. I was going to say if the Crown Castle project was longer in duration, you could authorize that to take place with National Grid coming right behind them to do the leak, but it appears that the Crown Castle project will be done much sooner. So, I mean, you can do whatever you want. You're the
Well,
select
so the
board,
citizens of Brookline have to put up with two different projects in the very same spot within a few months of each other because these two companies can't get together and do it at the same time?
Well,
I mean, that doesn't seem right to me.
Well, it also doesn't seem right to hold one company hostage because another one is not playing fair. They're mandated to address it within the year.
well, they agreed with us to address it within 6 months. So,
How would you propose holding their feet to the fire on that?
well, we can only try. We have limited, authority over them as well, other than, you cannot refuse to issue a street opening permit to National Grid, so it's very difficult. Our leverage is much reduced.
Aren't we working with MAPC on this
Mhm,
issue?
we are, yeah. But,
All I can tell you is that we will do whatever we can within our powers to force the repairs to that gas main as soon as possible. It's a grade 2 leak. I'm sure that it's not a huge project to repair this leak. We're probably talking a few days, not knowing the details of it, but it didn't appear to me that it's a very long project to repair a grade 2 leak on a residential street. So we'll do what we can do to force them to speed up the repair, but I can't make any guarantees to this board.
Would you at least be willing to, during the street opening permit, seek some cooperation from the two utilities to?
Yes, absolutely, I would, yes.
So we've got a motion on the table. I'll call for a vote now. Select Person Heller,
no.
Select Person Hamilton,
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. We've got a second grant of location hearing. This time National Grid is appearing for a permission to install a gas main and other structures on the following roads: Norfolk Road, Craft Road, Circuit Road, Spooner Road, and Reservoir Road. Mr. Ditto, what's going on here?
To start with, there's no representative from National Grid here. So I don't know if you want to continue this meeting or push it off to another future meeting.
Ooh, let's push it off.
Yeah, I think we have to continue the meeting. I mean, this is I take the installation of gas infrastructure very seriously, and frankly, I'm pretty disappointed that National Grid couldn't extend us the courtesy of showing up for the public hearing. So we'll continue this to a future meeting.
Okay.
Apologies to anyone who came out.
Yeah.
The next hearing is on a petition of NSTAR Electric. We are continuing, we're moving on to the next hearing. So
you're not dealing with that petition?
we're not going to deal with it tonight because we don't have National Grid here. I apologize, but we're all here. National Grid didn't see fit to show up. And I don't think we can have a conversation without hearing what they're proposing to do. So we'll have to reschedule it. So the next agenda item is on a petition of NSTAR Electric, doing business as Eversource, for some work on Auburn Street, Ivy Street, and Prescott Street.
Hi, my name is Katie Flaherty, and I'm representing Eversource tonight. So for Auburn Street, on the southwesterly side, approximately 70 feet northwest of Auburn Place, at pole 7/7, we'd like to install 7 feet of conduit to the customer's private property line to provide electric service for a new 12-unit residential building that's located at 54 Auburn Street.
And what's the work on Ivy Street and Prescott Street? Is that
That's
connected?
different.
It's different?
It's different.
Okay. Yep, so this is a public hearing, so why don't we move to questions? So please step up to the microphone and we can talk about Auburn Street.
So I am the buyer on Auburn Street, and
Just introduce yourself for the record,
Pamela
please.
Redlener. I live at 48 Auburn Street, which is right next to the 54 Auburn. And my question is, the 7 feet of the private property, what is that going to look like for me if they're going to put the conduit there?
The pole that the conduit will be coming from will run from the pole that's in front of 54, and it will go to 54. So it's 7 feet from that pole into the private property. So it shouldn't affect your property.
So we're talking about digging underground and laying conduit and wiring, so there would be no aesthetic impact to you aside from construction activities?
The construction is there. No, no. What is your address? 48, no. Okay, I can take information from you too, just to be sure. Okay.
Too late?
Great.
Okay, sure.
Why don't we move on to Ivy Street? What's the work there?
So on Ivy Street, this work Eversource has already done. It was done during the wintertime because of a potential fault that was there. And it also retired the split fiber main direct buried system that was an old system. And what we did was at the intersection of Essex and Ivy Street, continuing east, then turning north on Prescott Street, we installed 291 total feet of conduit, and this supplied electric service to house numbers 156, 157, and 165 Ivory Street, and 35 Prescott Street.
So the work's already been done?
Work was done. Work was done in January as an emergency.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So this is sort of a
We're following up.
housekeeping item. It is a public hearing, so is there anybody here to speak on the already completed work on Ivy Street?
Customer reviews.
All right. Prescott Street, what's the work there?
That was the
That
Ivy
was
and
on-
Prescott.
associated with the
That's it.
Ivy Street, okay.
Yes.
So questions from the board? Okay, so I will move granting of the petition of NSTAR Electric, company doing business as Eversource, for permission to construct and a location for such lines of conduits and manholes with the necessary cables therein under the following public ways: on Auburn Street, on Ivy Street, and on Prescott Street. Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. I understand a representative from Eversource has appeared, or from National Grid, excuse me, to talk about the petitions for work on Norfolk Road, Crafts Road, Circuit Road, Spooner Road, and Reservoir Road.
I think many of our residents left. See Judy's
So,
here, but- All right, I guess they're back.
do the residents feel like you've kept your group together, or have people left? Okay, so why don't you tell us what's going on?
Miscommunication. We thought we were due to be here at 7:30, so I apologize. Let me apologize first.
All right.
And so this is a revision of a grant of location that we've been here for already. And it's to install and maintain approximately 300 feet of 20-inch gas main in Norfolk Road, Brookline, from the existing 24-inch gas main in Boylston Street, northwesterly to the intersection of Crafts Road. Approximately 670 feet, more or less, of 20-inch gas main in Crafts Road from the 20-inch gas main in Norfolk Road northeasterly to the intersection of Circuit Road. Approximately 250 feet, more or less, of 20-inch gas main in Circuit Road from the new 20-inch in Crafts northwesterly to the intersection of Spooner Road, and approximately 1,400 feet, more or less, of 20-inch gas main in Spooner Road from the new 20-inch on Circuit Road northeasterly to the existing 12-inch in Reservoir Road for a system reinforcement.
So I guess the first question is why the revision? What was the problem with the previous grant of location that we offered you, I think, back in March of 18?
I believe, I'm not sure, I'll have to call up someone that could describe. John Bacchus.
Board members, John Bacchus, National Grid. Sorry for any confusion and delays we may have caused. The reason for the revision is, as permitted with the other grant of location, previously to getting accepted to the grant of location, we were not permitted to do test holes to find a corridor for the gas line. With this one, we've been permitted to do test holes. We've located a good corridor to install the gas main. So we are very confident that this is the corridor we need and will be utilized for the project.
So you ran into obstructions on the previous path?
Correct, we did. We ran into, there might have been some drainage or tree roots, similar objects, existing utilities, stuff like that in the pathway.
Are those general examples, or is that what the team ran into?
No, those are existing utilities, tree roots, and also there was some type of drainage in the way as well.
Other questions from board members? Okay, well, this is a public hearing. There are a number of residents here, so why don't you step on up and offer comments or ask questions if you have them.
Good evening. I'm Judy Selwyn. I live at 285 Reservoir Road. First, I'd like to say that the proponent has provided no reason for the necessity for this work, except to serve surrounding areas of Brookline, Newton, and Brighton, which is an extremely broad definition of need. This is not to serve the individual homes along this route at all. Additionally, there's a warrant before town meeting now that would limit fossil fuel use in new construction and in significant alterations to structures. If that was passed, There's no way houses along this route would get any benefit from that. It's interesting to see that they had a problem with their routing, but they still have not given us a map with the exact new routing and exactly where down the street this will be going. The proposed area is actually a very small area with only 3 parallel streets. Middlesex Road, which becomes one way in its middle. The other 2 are Spooner and Crafts. If they were to work on Spooner and Crafts at the same time, there would be no way to get into this neighborhood. I would also note that Norfolk Road is also one way. And this would actually force traffic from the neighborhood onto Route 9. And I'm sure Select Person Heller knows there's a monumental gas leak at the corner of Hammond Street and Route 9, which has never been addressed. And every time I get to that corner, I'm waiting for it to blow. Right now, there's also construction on Hammond Street, which is right adjacent to this neighborhood and on the way to Route 9, which is completely tying up the neighborhood. In the past, I have found that delivery trucks have not been able to get to my house because of utility construction. And it has been quite an inconvenience where day after day, UPS or FedEx just doesn't come, and we're forced to follow these up and then go to the depot to make deliveries. There seems in the past to be no effort to make the streets available to vendors and contractors who need to go into these streets. So it's possible that this project will take 1 year or more. These are very narrow residential streets lined with houses, and I see no benefit to the people living on these streets of this project. I would request that the proponent seek an alternate route that does not go through residential streets. Thank you.
Ms. Helms Daly.
Good evening. Susan Helms Daly, a member of Mothers Out Front. And on behalf of Mothers Out Front, I just want to commend the Select Board for taking the gas leaks issue so seriously, for working so tirelessly with National Grid for a schedule for fixing gas leaks, and for just holding on tight to our values as a community when it comes to this issue. That's all.
Mr. Benka.
Thank you. Dick Benka, 26th Circuit Road, essentially one house away from this project. Following up on some of Select Person Heller's comments, if you do grant this authority, this would be the perfect place to put a condition that the gas leak on Beacon Street be fixed, and the gas leak on Hammond and Route 9 be fixed before this project can start. Now, as to whether this project should go forward, Select Person Heller, again, you talked about people on Beacon Street having to face 2 projects in front of their homes. This would actually be the 3rd project on Norfolk Road. The street was dug up once, homes were blocked. Actually, people could not get into their driveways. Then it was torn up again to put in a line to serve Boston College. And now this would be the 3rd time that section of Norfolk Road would be torn up. So it would be 3 times on Norfolk Road, 3 projects on Norfolk Road within a couple of years. And I guess I would ask the question, precisely what Brookline properties need this? Not this is generally the surrounding area, but precisely which of our residents in Brookline, precisely what properties in Brookline need this? And I would look for an answer to that question from National Grid. Thank you.
Mr. Barkus, do you care to respond to any of those comments?
So To the last question, the areas, or not exact residents to be specific, but it's a system reinforcement. So we have multiple days when it's extremely cold that we have lower pressure. We've installed new regulator stations, and a regulator station is something that carries our higher elevated pressure and then drops it down to our distribution residential pressure. And to be able to make sure that those systems run accordingly, safe and reliable, we need to make sure that we have the correct amount of volume and also flow and pressure coming into the system. Unfortunately, Brookline is a corridor to many areas. There's bridges, there's roadways, there's overpasses that our system can't just flow specifically and smooth and straight. So we have to be able to pick specific areas to make sure where there's any bottlenecks, to make sure that that elevated pressure can stay to a level that runs safe. We don't want to have our pressure drop, especially at our reg stations. When our regulator stations drop, there's potential to lose customers, and those customers could be anywhere from Street 1 to Street 100. It's a very technical system, and with all of the regulator stations, they need to be able to have the flow and the capacity that is needed. Again, it doesn't happen on a 70-degree day when people aren't using a lot of energy, but it'll happen on those cold days when everybody's heat turns on at 5 a.m. in the morning, or when they come home and they start cooking at 6 o'clock at night. Those are when the elevated pressures, we see the dips, and we can't have the dip. We really need to, keep the system reliable and safe for everybody. And it's not just the town of Brookline, which unfortunately it's not, but it's a corridor, and it filters out to other areas.
So what's the nexus between this project and this leak that we've heard exists at the intersection of Hammond and Route 9? Are they at all connected, and is the plan to deal with both of those issues at the same time?
No, they are not, but as I've noted here, Hammond Street at Route 9 and Beacon Street, if I could get the exact number at Beacon Street, I can bring that back to our field operations. We can prioritize that to make sure that gets done.
1,200.
Excuse me?
1,200 Beacon.
1,200. And we've done that in the past. I can't go out and fix every leak tomorrow, but we can definitely, as I've done before, work with the town, prioritize leaks that you need fixed, that are these nuisance leaks that people are always calling about. Recently I've been getting some emails about an area in town. They've been emailing me. I send that off to engineering. We're gonna try to put that in for a new main replacement for next season. So we are working together with the town to try to make sure that the system is operating correctly, and the gas leaks are a priority to us.
Can you talk a little bit about why you feel that this, I get the need for system reinforcement, why this is the right location for it, and even since it's about the broader system, why it even needs to, this work needs to take place in Brookline, but specifically this location?
Yeah, again, there's a bottleneck area, and what I'll do is I brought a few people with me, and I'll bring engineering up. So Aaron Pike can speak a little bit more specifically about the bottleneck at a bridge. And that'll probably bring a little bit more life to it, if you don't mind, Aaron. Yeah, maybe. And I do have a visual if you'd like to put it up on the monitor.
Sure.
Just a flasher, if you wanted to, but we'll let Aaron answer.
Okay, why don't you answer, Aaron?
Sure. My name's Aaron Pike. I'm with the Engineering Department, National Grid. So the 22-pound system, our higher pressure system that he was speaking to, it kind of funnels to that pedestrian bridge that crosses on Reservoir Road over the train tracks. So in order to essentially provide more gas at the front end, be it southern in the Brookline area, to allow more gas to pass through that main that's located on that footbridge, we kind of just need to create more of an inlet, I guess you'd say, to that location.
And why is why is the current system not up to snuff now? Was it before, and what has changed that requires this system reinforcement?
I mean,
Is it the demand, or?
yeah, I mean, they run, our system operating engineering team runs 5-year analyses and every year, and they project the growth as well as the need for existing new customers, businesses.
Is that demand coming from within Brookline or this neighborhood, or is it coming from elsewhere?
I mean, depending on what model they're looking at, they're projecting that growth as well as feeding the immediate customers.
Okay. And we have a warrant article that's before us in November that would actually ban sort of the installation of new fossil fuel infrastructure for new homes and buildings that go up, and also for gut renovations. Would that impact the calculus on how much demand is needed from this particular system?
It very well could. I don't run those personally, but it is, I'm sure, something they're going to be taking into account if that's something that comes to fruition.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What would happen if this board votes no?
So the past 3 years, I heard one of the residents mention Boston College and how Boston College needed a reinforcement on Norfolk Road. So that is true. So at that time, we looked at other areas on where could we go, how could we make this system better. And again, the model gets run, and we did an upgrade on Norfolk Road on our existing system. So the reinforcement for Boston College right now, they meet all their needs. This will help Boston College, this will help, Newton, this will help Brighton, Brookline. If I've asked, because we came across once, asked for permission, we had a lot of restrictions on it, and I was like, why this neighborhood, why this neighborhood? They said, due to the footbridge and the bottleneck right there, that is the point. That is the point that we need to get in. We do reinforcements in other areas, whether it be East Boston, Quincy, wherever it could be. And sometimes they might be a reinforcement for infrastructure that is being built, skyscrapers or heavy-duty kitchens and stuff like that. And those could be a mile away. But right here at this point, it's the bottleneck that we have that is causing the low points, they call it a droop, in the town of Brookline specifically, and also in Newton, and also the Brighton areas. So if we weren't to be able to do this, we would probably have to come back to you and put in more regulator stations to be able to maintain the system at an operating pressure. And we already have done, I believe, 3 this year. So this is pretty much, we're at like the Tilton scale right now, where we're like just there. We're pretty much done. And then basically our focus is going to be main replacements, which will help with the leaks in the town and leak repairs. Basic maintenance in our system. This is to get our system up. We now have in place the regulator stations. We'll have in place the new reinforcement, and then we can work on putting more resources into main replacement on the leak-prone pipe and working on leaks. That's what I'd probably be back next construction season asking you for, grant a location to install probably 2 more regulator stations. So that's where we are.
So one of the other things we heard from the residents is concerns about access. Delivery trucks not being able to get in, driveways being blocked. Can you give us a sense of what access would look like, hours of work, road closures? What are we talking about in terms of immediate impact to butters?
Yeah, so I can answer that, but tonight I did make sure that I brought construction management with me, my project manager with me, and engineering also. And we've gone over this and over this and over this. This project then again has to be, all eyes on it. I've emailed a few of your residents and with the same questions. We will allow full access. Now sometimes, and I'm gonna be honest, Sometimes we're gonna ask a neighbor or somebody, hey, if you're leaving today, we're gonna block your driveway for the day. Do you need to come back in and out? And if they do, then that's when we use the road plates to cover up their entrance to their driveway. We try to communicate that with the residents on an ongoing basis as we move down the project. We really don't want to have cut-through traffic blasting through there as much as it does now. Will we allow school buses? Yes. Any type of emergency equipment that has to get through? Absolutely. Do we want to close down the road? Does it make it easier for construction? It does. But if we can't, we won't. If it does a detour that's going to only allow somebody to go down a one-way, with safety in there, we will not allow that. So full access will be allowed. If we can manage a detour, we will do a detour with a road closure, allowing either be services for people's houses, you know, visitors, garbage trucks, any type of like utilities being dropped off, moving trucks, whatever it may be. We have to work closely with the police department to make sure that the details are allowing access for these people to come in and out. And that's a key component, that the communication with the police department, our construction crews, and our management team is working on that. And then also funneling any other concerns to me, so that way I can address it with the management team.
Nancy.
Okay, well, I think it'll be probably no surprise to the people in this room that I'm opposed to granting this at least until we get the leaks in that area fixed. Now, I know that there are no leaks very approximate to the work that you're doing, but there are leaks very nearby in Beacon Street, as the residents have said, and Hammond at Route 9. And we've complained about these leaks before. They never get fixed. It's very, very frustrating. That's the first thing. The second thing is we do have this warrant article which would ban new fossil fuel installations in new buildings and homes. And, you know, you basically confirmed that this project is not benefiting the people whose lives are going to be seriously disrupted by it, and in that neighborhood. So it really concerns me that we get a double whammy here. We don't get our leaks fixed, and we, you know, put up new gas installations for no benefit to Brookline. So we lose on two counts. So I don't plan to vote on this unless there is a condition attached which will mandate that these leaks be fixed. And until we have the results of the warrant article in November, which would, maybe it won't pass. I think it probably will, but maybe it won't. And then we'll have a better idea as to whether or not we should be approving this type of grant of location. But I wouldn't approve it in any case until those other leaks are completely fixed.
Okay.
That's my condition.
Yep. And I can definitely take back the two leaks that were mentioned tonight. We can definitely work on those leaks.
Well, actually, there was a third leak before you got here, and that was in the area of St. Mary's and Beacon.
Yep, I can definitely take those back, and I think my word is pretty good with the town here. Make sure we get those prioritized and worked on as soon as we can. You know, keep in mind, I understand, you know, the fossil fuel and everybody coming through, and it's not gonna happen as much as everybody would like it to happen tomorrow, you know. But I'm a firm believer that with what we do have, we really need to make sure that it's a safe, reliable product until we reach that point of, you know, no fossil fuels at all. You know, we need to make sure that this product is a safe, reliable product.
Well, there's a lot you could do to make it safer, Mr.
Yep.
Barkis, and that is fixing these leaks. They emit methane, which is very deadly greenhouse gas and is very bad for our health. So that should be where you really want to start. And we've been working with National Grid, and we're having some good meetings, but it's moving like a snail, or even slower. So we have to do something to You're right, it's probably not going to be fixed tomorrow, but there's no reason these leaks could not be fixed in the next few months.
Absolutely, I agree.
So,
We'll take
sorry.
your question, and then we'll go to the,
It's not so much a question. I just am not inclined to vote for this. I'm very disturbed that this is the third time that we will be inconveniencing these residents.
Okay.
That is all I wanted to say.
Hi, I'm one of the residents on 27 Crafts Road. My name is Michael Siegel. I would, of course, rather this be built on somebody else's street, but it has to be somewhere. I'm not going to raise an objection in that regard. It seems that if this is primarily just going through our area and not really providing gas to Brookline, that conditioning it on the November restrictions on gas use, which I oppose, I don't think makes any sense because that won't really affect the situation. I do think the thing about fixing leaks is important, and if there's leverage here, it should be used, and it would be great if there could be not just quickly, but actually coordinating with other things, so the street only needs to be torn up once. So I think those would be great, and that's all.
So before you bring this to a vote, again, this is the third time that we've come about for this project. One, it was for Norfolk Road. Two, it was for Norfolk and Middlesex. We were not permitted to do the test holes. So we had to get back out of that one. So we were provided a grant of location to do this project. It's just in a different area, adding a couple of streets to it. So I would hope that you take that in consideration, that at one point you did, grant this. I've also gone as far as, we had an open house for the community, at the request from the town. Not many residents showed up, but we did. We sent out notifications, we sent out an ad in the newspaper. We had a 2-hour meeting downstairs. We only had 3 residents show up. They asked lots of questions, lots of concerns. We addressed them all. We took into advisory what they would request us to do. We talked about it as a team. I'm very confident that if this project goes through, it'll go through a lot smoother than some of the other projects in the years past. So I'd like you to consider that, again, as it was once granted. And we also did apply to come forward for this grant, approximately a month ago, maybe even longer. We kept getting pushed out, and we would have been here before this, the new law might come into effect. So also take that in consideration. I know you're probably not going to, but we did try to get here before, but this town's very busy. And, we didn't kick and scream to get in here. We asked and we requested, and we did as advised by the town, so.
But Mr. Barkus, we have been talking to you about these leaks for the 4 years that I've been on the board. And maybe in the beginning you were not our community rep, and we've appreciated your attention to our issues. On the other hand, the leaks just don't seem to get fixed. And so it's very frustrating from at least where I'm sitting. And I think the residents who drive around their area and smell the gas and wonder what's going on are also frustrated. So, I think National Grid needs to make fixing these leaks a priority. And, it doesn't seem like that's happening.
Well, since April 2019, we've done over 115 grade 1 leaks in the town. We've also done, over 60 grade 2s, 15 grade 2As, and we've also done 6 grade 3s. So
And how many more do you have to go, do you know?
We have 19 grade 2s, 72 2As, and 216 grade 3s.
So you have approximately 300 leaks still remaining. Is that fair?
That's fair to say, but at the same time, it's also fair to say that it's not that we're not working on them. We are working on them. So to hear that we're not working on them is kind of a bash to me, because I've been pushing to get these worked, and I have been getting them worked.
And we appreciate your
Right.
efforts, but, you know, it's like swimming upstream, because the leaks keep happening. So I think National Grid has to figure out how to accelerate the maintenance and repair of our streets and these leaks.
So I'm going to make a motion, and the chips are going to fall where they might. I'm going to attach 3 conditions, which are the conditions that were on the previous grant of location. So let me read them for the board's edification, and then we'll take a vote. So I'll move that we approve the petition of National Grid for the installation of gas mains and other structures on Norfolk Road, Crafts Road, Circuit Road, Spooner Road, and Reservoir Road with the following 3 conditions. That National Grid, before they commence work, submit a plan for repairs of all gas leaks in town with a timetable and within a reasonable amount of time to the Director of Engineering, with a priority to address the super emitters leaks and the leak at the intersection of Route 9 and Hammond Street. That the work be performed Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and that the disturbed roads are resurfaced, milled, and overlaid for half the road in consultation with the town engineer, who may require, in his judgment, a full resurfacing of the road.
So if I may, before,
Mhm.
we did submit that plan on the repair of the leaks. So if I could, yeah, so if that could be taken off, we did submit that plan, we sat down, submitted
But that
the
was
plan.
many months ago.
Right, and it's still the same plan. As you know, as we've met, we met back in June, and we discussed the plan, and we're still working together to try to get that plan, to move it more forward to the best of our ability at this time. And we're not gonna stop there. Our ultimate goal is to get rid of gas leaks.
Well, we still had the leak at Hammond and Route 9, and we still had the leak on Beacon, and neither of those have been fixed.
You have now given me 3 leaks as a priority. I will take care of those 3 leaks, as I told you. If you gave me those 2 weeks ago, they would already have been permitted and dig safed, ready to be repaired. This is the first time that you personally have mentioned them to me. I will take care of them.
Well, you know, I think that,
Can we just get to the
So,
vote,
yeah, so
please?
Nancy, I think you've
Sorry,
made
sorry,
your
I
point.
made my point.
So Raul, you had a comment as well.
Well, I mean, the conditions might be moot if 2 other, I also plan to vote against this, and so if there are 2 others that plan to, the conditions are moot anyway, as I was gonna save us some time.
Okay.
So,
But very creative, Ben.
yeah.
So we'll take the vote. The motion's on the table. I think we've all got clarity on it. So Select Person Heller,
No.
Select Person Hamilton,
No.
Select Person Fernandez,
No.
and the chair will vote aye. So, no permit, and
Fix the leaks and then come back.
I will, all right, thank you.
Nothing against you, Mr. Barkus.
No, I understand, and there's, there's new facilities that you guys are also using, and we all need these gas facilities, so, appreciate your time, thank you.
All right, next up are warrant article hearings. I apologize, we're about 20 minutes behind schedule. And for those who may be here for Article 24, it's being held. There was I guess, a communication issue between the Select Board office and the petitioner. So we'll start with Article 7, pavement markings. I see Mr. Miller, and I see Ms. Electris here, and just a reminder, we had some correspondence over the weekend. We're going to do a dry run of town meeting, so 10 minutes.
Okay, is it all right if I just plug in slides?
Yes.
Awesome.
I don't know if that's going to work.
I assume I just turn it on, right?
Hold on.
Thank you. You can run the clock, because I'm not going to need the full 10.
think it just popped up. The USB disk G. There you go.
Thank you. Okay, while that's happening, so I'm Bob Miller, and I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 8, teacher at the Heath School. And the reason that I brought this forward is that although there's probably some relation to the environment, it's really a safety issue that I'm bringing forward. And the street markings for long lines are getting done regularly, and the town, I've found, is very conscientious about doing street painting and keeping the markings up to snuff, but not all of the markings. And since they're a safety issue, and since the markings are there to make the streets safer for all of the people who are using the streets, whether they're walking, biking, scootering, dare I say, or driving or in a wheelchair, that it's come to our attention that the markings are not always able to be painted. And my understanding since filing the warrant article is that that the DPW or the Highway Department, is actually well aware of this, and it's a funding issue, and if they don't have the money, they don't do it. What we're asking for is that this warrant article will alert the town that there needs to be the money in the budget to do the painting of all of the street markings, and that the idea of bringing it in November is so that in May that can be accomplished. And I will show just a couple of quick photos if this opens up for me. It's a PDF file, so it shouldn't be too complicated. Okay. So, so this is an example of a crosswalk. This is by no means, everywhere, but examples of each. So this is a crosswalk in Coolidge Corner. Obviously, the crosswalk on the right-hand side is fine. The crosswalk on the left-hand side is not. You can see there was street repairs made over there, but even if you look at the lines that are left right by the left edge of the sidewalk, you can see that it was not in very good shape even before that. Here's an example of bike lane markings. So the long lines are clearly in good shape, but you can barely tell that there's bike markings there. And it's not just the cycle symbol, but also bike lane was there prior. This is an example of a handicap space, parking space on Beacon Street on the inbound side. And then this is actually right near the main library. And you can see on the top there's the remnants of a bike indicator. I believe that actually was a sharrow to begin with, not a bike lane. And then down on the bottom is, in fact, I know is a sharrow, which doesn't benefit from the long lines because that's not a bike lane. That's a travel lane for cars. And so the sharrow is the only thing that's alerting cars that they need to be aware that bicycles have the right to use that road. And I think, yep, that's it. So those are the indications, the photos. So basically, pretty simple. The markings are there for safety, and if we're going to put in infrastructure, we need to maintain it. And I think, yeah, Christie, do you want to say some things? I didn't use up all the time, did I?
No, that's fine.
Oh, phew.
You got about 6.5 minutes left.
Okay, great. I'm Christy Electris. I'm a co-petitioner on this warrant article. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 7. I'm also a member of and a co-coordinator of the Safe Routes to School Task Force, which is a statewide program, a statewide initiative that works on improving safe travel to and from schools. And our group is focused on all K-8 Brookline schools with an emphasis on increasing walking and biking to school where possible for the health of the students and for the environmental benefits, as well as for traffic reduction around the schools and to improve safety for everyone. So as part of this relatively new group, we've been working with town, school, and police departments, the health department, kind of all the departments across the town to identify and improve these routes. And we really appreciate actually that the DPW makes an effort at the beginning of the school year to repaint some of the crosswalks right around the schools and make them very visible, because it reminds the drivers that, hey, kids are going to be crossing here. And of course we have crossing guards. But we also pride ourselves in town that we are a very walkable school community. My kids go to Pierce next door, and the vast majority of us walk to and from school or bike or scoot. The problem is we don't just walk and scoot right around the schools. We're coming from all over town, and the lack of clear markings for bike routes and for pedestrian crossings is a real danger for our kids. A lot of the kids are starting to walk on their own by 3rd and 4th grade. So I wanted to co-petition with Bob because this seems like kind of a loophole that we've left out this maintenance of this great investment that we have been working on diligently. The Bicycle Advisory Committee and the Pedestrian Advisory Committee have been working to expand our walking and biking supports. So I think that it's important that we maintain that investment. And that's what this warrant article is all about, just ensuring that we're keeping that in mind as we go forward. Thank you.
Perfect.
So you had
I had a question.
You had a question.
Have you kind of priced out like how much this might require budget-wise?
Yes, I left the sheet over here, but I didn't price it out. The credit goes to the town. So the DPW, the highway, Todd Corain and Kevin
Johnson.
John, thank you, had provided us with figures, and I don't have the sheet right in front of me, it's just over there, but it was about $77,000 additional.
Per year?
Per year if they land up getting painted every year.
So why don't we call up folks from the DPW, and they can sort of level set the conversation about what the status quo is around painting, and then they can talk to us about money and what some of the options are. Okay. So
Sounds good.
thank you.
Thank you.
I think you're up, Todd. So it sounds like crosswalks and bike lanes and handicapped and other sort of informational markings on the street are at issue here. So why don't you tell us what the schedule is for when those types of markings get repainted, the frequency, and then we can get into the dollars and cents.
Todd Crane, Transportation Administrator for the town of Brookline. I had sent around a memo earlier today with this spreadsheet that I'm going to be reading off of to you. This was also provided to the Capital Subcommittee, the Advisory Committee, as well as the petitioners. And essentially what the current budget is $102,673 for pavement markings annually. And what that allows DPW Highway Division to do is to paint using what's called a chlorinated rubber paint. It typically has a life expectancy of 6 months. It can be less depending on how bad the winters are and whether the markings are within the wheel, the wheel paths, etc. But essentially what that money provides is for us to paint the long lines, the white, the yellow, and the double yellow long lines twice a year, and allows DPW to paint approximately 55% of all crosswalks in town twice a year. Those are centered around the schools and the commercial districts, so sort of high pedestrian areas. The remaining 45% of crosswalks further into the neighborhoods are painted once a year. The symbols, the arrows, the onlys, and the school symbols, as you're entering a school zone, are able to be painted once a year. And it covers 20% of police details that are required to do this work. So the police details at the latest contract were, to do the work, were $5,000. This covered $1,000 of it. So the current contract with our vendor plus the details uses the full budget. And what that means is that we're not able to get to the other crosswalks a second time each year, and we're not able to get to any other symbol, whether it be the Sharrow, the bike lane, the bike arrow, or the handicap symbols at all. And we take those on really a complaint-based. So if there's complaints that come in, DPW tries to go out there and repaint those. But there's no schedule to paint those on an annual, regular, recurring maintenance, similar to the other pavement markings. We just don't have the budget to do it. We recognize that they are for safety reasons. Unfortunately, our budget, we're stretching it as far as we possibly can. In terms of the additional cost question, what we had done is we had priced out in this basically a cafeteria, kind of type. You can pick and choose what you wanted to do and to get an idea of what would be needed to fully fund this. Since crosswalks are a priority to the petitioners, especially with the Safe Routes to School task force and program, which I'm part of, the additional cost to do the 45% a second time each year is $11,280. The additional cost to do the symbols, the arrows, and the onlys in the school zone a second time per year is $8,505. We also provide the additional cost to do the long lines a third time per year if that was desired. And then for the bike symbols, we broke it out using, again, the chlorinated rubber paint. The shared lane markings, if we were to be able to paint them once per year, it'd be $9,596. The bike straight arrows once per year would be a little under $3,000. The bike left arrow once per year would be $165. There's not many of those. And the bike rider symbol in the bike lanes, as you saw, that was significantly faded in one of the examples, would be $3,308. And then we have the green pavement marking. So that's not able to be painted in the chlorinated rubber paint. This is a special marking that's used in high conflict areas as bikes lanes are moving across intersections or bike boxes or left turn queue boxes. So what we did there is the material is called MMA. We took that price, which is significant, and we divided it by a third. So if we were to paint it 1/3 of the green each year, that would be $14,250. So that gives you an idea of the different cost implications to the budget in terms of what would have to be added to the existing budget in order to accomplish some of these goals that the petitioners want.
Could you speak to how long those last? The green you just mentioned now, you said we'd be able to get to 1/3 of them, but how long do they usually last?
That material on a brand new roadway, the material wears differently. So a brand new roadway, when it's put down, we're seeing that we can get 5 to 7 years. When you're putting it down on an older roadway, so you didn't redo the pavement, what we're finding is Kevin Johnson, who's director of highway, was talking to his peers in Newton and Cambridge and Boston that use thermoplastic and this type of material as part of their maintenance. And they said based on the winter, based on the snow plows, which are actually no longer have a rubber tip to them, they're actually catching, that really we're seeing it last 3 years or less. So that's why we're basing everything on a maximum expectation of a 3-year period if we're using the higher priced material for maintenance purposes.
And that sort of last chart you have there, safe to say this is the deluxe package?
Yes.
This is the works, right?
That is the
and
deluxe
so
package.
I see, whereas one of the others says additional cost, this is the total annual cost. So we're already paying about $102,000 a year, which doesn't cover everything we need, but
Right.
That's what we're paying currently, and it would go up to 272, so.
So
I mean,
if we were to adopt the other communities' mentality in terms of using thermoplastic for maintenance purposes, and we were to paint a third of the town every 3 years, it'd be $272,917.
Although, each year, or it lasts longer, you mentioned, so.
Each year.
Okay.
So we'd be painting a third of the town each year. So to do everything would be that price times
Got it.
3. Again, we're talking new roads and mostly old roads. So
Right,
the
right.
markings don't last as
Right.
long.
Okay.
So I assume that advisory hasn't heard this yet? Where did you say that,
The capital subcommittee had their public hearing last week. I do not believe it's gone to the full advisory. I'll let the,
okay. Did you know if the capital subcommittee had any recommendations for where the extra funds would come from?
no. So they acknowledged that there was the need. They did not discuss where they would come from.
Okay, so there's a two-part
yeah.
problem here.
So let's put Mr. Kleckner on the hot seat.
Oh.
Where are we going to find this money?
Well, so let me just make a couple comments. First of all, I want to acknowledge the legitimacy of the petition. I mean, clearly, the town would like to have these markings more clear and done more effectively. It's my job to put a budget together every year for the town that incorporates all of our costs, including schools, all the way, public works, police, fire, and just to give you some idea, I mean, I have dozens and dozens and dozens of requests like this from every department, and they're very legitimate. But the fact of the matter is, we've appointed a special committee to try to get a handle on how it is that we're going to be able to spend more than what we take in every year, and we've relied on overrides really for the last 5 fiscal years, so tax overrides. So we're trying to get a handle on that. So I don't want to dismiss the issue. I just want to put it in some context. We have a very challenging budget to put together. One of the things that this article would do for me, I think, and the Public Works Commissioner, is we spend a lot of time in our budget meetings every year not only talking about funding, but also how to do things differently or better, do more with less, if you will. And so we certainly will do that. And whether this passes or not, I think, what I'm hearing is we're going to spend a fair amount of time on paint markings this budget season. But I don't want to give any false illusions, because this is one of so many legitimate requests we get every year we cannot fund. It's just, it's very difficult to do that. But having said that, I commit to looking at it very hard.
So I'll echo Mr. Kleckner's comments in that I appreciate the focus on this issue. I mean, the pictures speak for themselves, that there are places that where the paint is worn, and particularly in regards to crosswalks, it's a safety issue. So I think you've got support from this board about the idea and the problem that you've pointed out. We just have to take a step back and figure out where the dollars are going to come from. So.
The other thing that occurs to me is some of those streets and places you pointed out, looked in pretty bad condition, the street itself. So I'm wondering whether DPW has planned to fix those particular streets, and in the course of that fixing would make new lines, and rather than doing it twice.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I just got today some photos of what it looks like when they're new, and, it's great. I mean, the town is doing a great job at what it's able to do. So I'm planning to include what it looks like in an ideal situation.
Can I also ask this, connected to a conversation we had earlier, when one of the various energy companies digs up the street, are they required, let's say we make this investment, we were to go, we find the money in some magical world, we go deluxe, are they also required after they dig up a street to bring it back to the deluxe standard that we have invested in?
Yes, so they're required to put back exactly what they took up, and including the material.
All right, well, this is a public hearing. Are there other members of the public that want to speak on this warrant article? Step on up.
Don't be shy.
Join the party, as our former chair used to say.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is John Bowman. I'm a resident of Beale Street. I also chair the Bicycle Advisory Committee. Most of what I wanted to say has already been said by the petitioners and by Mr. Crane. So I'll just say, emphasize one thing that has already been mentioned, I guess, but I want to highlight it. And that is that the existing DPW procedures call for repainting some things twice a year, some things once a year, some things not at all. And I'm concerned about the some things not at all and the way that the priorities are set. So regardless of how big the budget is, I think there needs to be some consideration of adjusting the priorities so that there's nothing in the not at all category. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is David Trevette. I live on 177 Babcock Street. I'm the chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, though speaking tonight as an individual. I've been involved in pedestrian affairs for a number of years in Brookline, both with the Pedestrian Advisory Committee and with the Brookline Community Aging Network. And I've walked many streets of Brookline, and I've seen that there are an awful lot of faded paint markings out there. My particular concern, of course, is with pedestrians, both facilitating pedestrian movement and with providing for pedestrian safety. So a couple of things I want to mention. My sort of trial by fire introduction to Town Matters was with the redesign of Babcock Street, starting in 2015 and extending 3 years. There was an awful lot of contention, as some of you will remember. One thing everybody agreed on is that slowing down traffic would be a boost to all modes of transit. And one of the things that happened in Babcock Street when we finally got to a resurfacing was an increase from 1 crosswalk in that half mile to 8 crosswalks. That sends a signal to drivers that they're passing through a residential neighborhood where they should expect to encounter pedestrians. It is a marked signal that ensures and or at least promotes pedestrian safety. There's no question about the fact that for pedestrians, the most lethal alternate form of transportation is the motorized vehicle. You get hit by a motorized vehicle, your chances are not very good, particularly if it's traveling at any reasonable rate of speed. The other thing I want to point out, which may be a surprise to many, is that this year our Pedestrian Advisory Committee has had multiple meetings with blind residents present. And what we've learned is that legally blind residents often have some vision left, and a well-painted crosswalk they can actually make out. And if you think about a blind person standing on the corner trying to cross the street, a faded crosswalk doesn't give them any clue about where to go. But a well-painted crosswalk, a well-maintained crosswalk, they can pick that out, even with low visual acuity. So I'm going to strongly support this warrant article. I do understand that there are difficult choices that the town has to make in terms of its budget allocations, but I want to just remind people this is really an important measure of what kind of town we are and how to promote pedestrian safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jan Preheim, and I live at 217 Walnut Street, and I am car-free. So I'm the person biking down Harvard Street, bike there to Coolidge Corner today, walk everywhere, and a lot of the signage, the roads are very faded, and I think it's a really great bargain. We lost our Coolidge Corner librarian this year to a bike accident in the Fenway. And whatever we can do to encourage people, more people to be car-free, to be riding bicycles, and to be walking, I think we should do. And I think it's a really great deal to make our roads safe. And I'd love to see everything on a schedule. And no more of this by complaint only. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Vitolo, hopefully you showed up with the Wells Fargo wagon.
Tommy Vitolo, a guy who rides a bike to get from here to there an awful lot. I guess I have two comments. The first, I would ask, sort of put the budget question and turn it around and say, not where are you going to get the money, but What have you been doing with the money you should have been using to maintain the infrastructure that you painted the first time all these years? And can we bring it back to doing what it ought to be doing, which is maintain infrastructure that our town processes have determined through the Transportation Board, through Advisory Committee and Select Board at town meeting should be there, right? We, as a community, through government, decided we wanted those particular lane markings in those particular places. And so we haven't had any conversation about getting rid of them, so they ought to be maintained. And the second comment I would simply make is, you're absolutely right, we've got to really sharpen our pencils and figure out how to stretch our dollars. Many of the stencils for the bicycle lanes are in great shape. Many of them are completely gone. We don't need to repaint them all every year. We only need to repaint the ones that are gone. And so rather than assume that all of these stencils, the arrows and the bicyclist, which is often coincidentally missing its head, but the rest of it's still there, so we could probably not repaint that one. Well, you watch, the little circle where the head is gone. Everything else is still there. Maybe there's a metaphor there. We only need to repaint the things that need to be repainted, not just blindly assume we're going to repaint everything every year. That serves as like a worst case, but I think realistically for the bicycle stencils, the arrows, the sharrows, the figures of bicyclists, we're not going to need to spend all of that money every year. I think the green paint, on the other hand, that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, that's probably a pretty good estimate. The green paint looks really great the first year. Second year, pretty good. By that third year, it really does start to disappear. And the reality is when we don't repaint our crosswalks, when we don't repaint our bicycle infrastructure, but we do repaint the motor vehicle infrastructure once or twice every year, the signal we're sending to all roadway users is clear. You're all equal, but some are more equal than others. And I don't think that's the signal that we want to send to our users on foot or on bicycle, and certainly not our users behind the wheel of a motor vehicle. We all need to be reminded to work together and to be civil and to be courteous to each other. And I think that actually starts with infrastructure that treats all users fairly in that way. And so thanks for working on this, guys and gals.
Select Person Fernandez.
Yeah, this is actually for the administrator. I'll start asking now, and if you can make your way up, maybe by the time I'm done, you'll be there. It's about protected bike lanes, and I'm wondering where that fits into this. If you can update us on any conversations about protected bike lanes, particularly in areas where cars are traveling at high speeds, particularly in lots of areas where certainly I've seen this happening regularly, where lots of cars, including Ubers and others, are stopping in bike lanes to drop folks off. A protected bike lane would stop things like that from happening. If we're talking about safety, we're talking about markings, where are we with the protected bike lanes?
So, we are actively working with the Bicycle Advisory Committee, the Transportation Board, and other advocates to look at various protected bike lanes. As you know, Pearl Street is wrapping up, knock on wood, and that includes now a separated bike lane raised at sidewalk level, separated from pedestrians by tree wells, trees separated by motorists by the raising and a curb. We also have one on Essex Street. We are working with the petitioners of the Bridle Path to identify funding for the feasibility study. And while we're doing that, we had our first, in May, we had our first sort of envisioned Bridle Path on Lower Beacon coming up October. The first, Jules, when is the date? I'm going to plug it now. What is it? On October 5th, we are having the next Envision the Bridle Path event on Upper Beacon from Williston down to Englewood, where we will close the median. We will simulate the bridle path. So that would eventually, once the bridle path gets constructed, that'll be a full protection of separation of bikes from motorists, from pedestrians. Until that time, we are actually advancing within the next CIP. We've looked at, based on the work of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, looking at the hotspots of the bike lanes, door zone bike lanes being blocked by Ubers and Lyfts and delivery vehicles. One of the biggest areas where that is on St. Mary's Street Beacon Street in the St. Mary's Commercial District, from St. Mary's to Carlton Street, that first block. We have developed concept plans that we're moving through the public process to make a parking protected bike lane similar to what Boston has done on their side of the border. So that will also create separation. So when we redo roadways, especially high volume roadways, our default is to try to do a protected bike lane and go from there if we're unable to.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
So let's close the public hearing on warrant Article 7. I am curious to hear what the capital subcommittee's recommendations are about this, particularly in regards to funding. So I'm going to propose that we hold this vote carried over to a future meeting. But certainly, I think you've heard the board is generally supportive of the concept and is well aware that we should find a better way, a more frequent way to paint some of these lane markings. So thank you for bringing it up.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to turn to warrant Article 31 now, about climate change. Jules Milner-Bragny is I think the chief petitioner, although there were a number of others. I'll just repeat something I said a little bit ago. The hearing on Article 24 is not going to happen tonight. It's being postponed due to a scheduling snafu. And we are now, I would estimate 30 to 40 minutes behind schedule. So I apologize to some of our businesses that are here for hearings that have been scheduled to start at 8 o'clock. So I'll just remind the petitioners of Article 31 that we had some correspondence over the weekend that we're going to treat this like a dry run of town meeting, and we'll give you 10 minutes to present, and then we'll hopefully open it up to the public hearing and the questions from the board. All right.
Good evening, Select Board and members of the public. I'm Susan Helms Daly. Jules Scott and I are the three lead co-petitioners of warrant Article 31, representing 11 total co-petitioners, including your own Heather Hamilton. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. This resolution is a direct outgrowth of the Sustainability Summit in June of this year, where 160 community members and town leaders brainstormed ways of reducing our carbon footprint. I was an enthusiastic participant as a mom and as a 20-year resident of this town that I have loved from the minute I sold my car in North Carolina and moved to a basement apartment in Coolidge Corner to work at an environmental think tank. I will be talking about the three primary motivations behind our resolution: climate, health, and equity. For the past century, we have pursued car-centric development. One of the unintended consequences of this is climate change. There's so much catastrophic news about the climate that it's easy to become numb to it. We can't. 43% of greenhouse gas emissions in Massachusetts stem from transportation, chiefly cars. Electric vehicles are a necessary part of the solution, but not sufficient. Our roads are full, and individual car ownership remains cost prohibitive to many. The second category of impacts is health epidemics. Asthma, obesity, diabetes, and heart disease are all on the rise, and all directly linked to car emissions or to inactivity. Another huge impact is collisions. It doesn't make the headlines, but more people die every year in this country from car crashes than from gun violence, including 90 pedestrians and cyclists in Massachusetts in 2017. Finally, our current system is inequitable. It disproportionately burdens elders, youth, people with lower incomes, people with disabilities, and people of color. All of the health impacts I mentioned affect people of color and low incomes at higher rates, and they all increase as walkability decreases. For seniors, driving can become less of an option, leaving them less engaged and less active. Recognizing this, the AARP has launched an initiative devoted to livable communities. Because we've invested so relentlessly, so lopsidedly in car-based travel, we have underinvested in reliable, efficient transit and other modes that can be made user-friendly for everyone, not just car owners. Shifting our policies will shift behavior and help alleviate the externalities I've outlined. Now I'll turn it over to Jules.
Thanks, Susan. And I'm Jules Milner-Bragi. I'm a resident of Aspinwall Hill and a town meeting member from Precinct 12. I want to thank you, the Select Board, for the opportunity to speak a little bit about this. I also want to thank and acknowledge Select Board Member Hamilton for her participation and co-petitionership on this article. Our large group of additional co-petitioners and contributors who are listed in the article. Sustainability Program Administrator Zoe Lynn, who looks like she's at the advisory committee currently, and our Transportation Administrator Todd Coran for their participation in the drafting of this article. As Susan described, supporting electrification of motor cars is important but not sufficient action alone to address the myriad problems posed by existing transport modes and habits. We also need to better support safe, accessible, reliable travel via a fuller array of transport modes beyond cars. More multimodal transport stands to reduce greenhouse gas and other pollution during the long tail of electrification of motor vehicles and the transition of electric power generation to entirely non-fossil fuel combustion methods. Critically, it also stands to improve health by supporting active travel, that is, travel wholly or partly via human power, and by enabling less exposure to high-speed and/or high-mass vehicle crashes. It stands to reduce the need to use precious land and building mass for vehicle parking, and it stands to reduce traffic and vehicle parking congestion. Brookline has great urban planning and suburban planning bones, an inheritance derived from the history of its development, that is, substantially around walking and public mass transit in the 19th and earliest 20th centuries, in what has become a central geographic location within the larger inner core of the Boston region. As I understand, by the dawn of the motor car era in the early 20th century, Brookline had electric trolley lines on Beacon Street, Harvard Street, Washington Street, Boylston Street / Huntington Avenue, Commonwealth Avenue, and more, plus multimodal path systems with distinct bridleways for riding, then on horseback, on Beacon Street, the Riverway, the Fenway, and Western Commonwealth Avenue. So this is looking up Boylston Street towards Chestnut Hill from Brookline Village. You can see the transit-oriented development in the picture and the high-quality train stop that's for the trolley that's running along what we now call Route 9, but really should be called Boylston Street. This is the same view of Boylston Street now with the trolley tracks turning onto Cypress Street, where there was a trolley maintenance barn. You can see the transit-oriented development, which has been torn down in the intervening years. Note, these are all electric vehicles. This is Washington Street near Park Street. A lot of those buildings are still there, and some of the elm trees, unfortunately, are gone. This is Brookline Village looking up Harvard Street and Washington Street. You can see people getting on the trolley. You can see the electric trolley catenary lines. You can see maintenance. You can see cars, carriages, horse-drawn carriages. And you can see the trolley tracks continuing up both Washington Street and Harvard Street. These continued. We don't have a picture of them here, but these continued down to meet the tracks on Boylston Street and also enabled trains to run onto Beacon Street from these same tracks. Since then, over the course of the 20th century, ADA accessibility features and bike lanes and car traffic calming have been retrofitted to public ways in an ad hoc manner, and many mass transit facilities have been removed. Now is a great time to better integrate or reintegrate these elements into public way designs. This stands to yield public ways that could afford more than just bare bones, sometimes conflict-ridden access, and instead could make public ways into spaces and places that work better for everyone, for people of all ages and abilities and financial means, and for uses beyond car travel and parking. To achieve these sorts of outcomes, we would need, as the Governor's Commission on the Future of Transportation in the Commonwealth 2018 report put it, to prioritize moving people over vehicles, especially large private vehicles used in low occupancy ways. Fortunately, Brookline's reasonably compact development pattern, still mostly intact, and favorable geographic location provide us numerous opportunities to relatively inexpensively demonstrate and pilot substantial public way improvements to the safety and quality of service for travel via foot, wheelchair, bicycle, public bus and train, and other similarly space and energy efficient, naturally low pollution modes. A program of pop-up and quick-build protected bike, scooter, and jogging lanes and paths, dedicated bus lanes, improved bus and train stop waiting and boarding facilities, daylighted and shortened crosswalks, for example, would provide a means for exploring change, refining designs, and finding local best practices together. Starting first, using traffic cones or bollards and revisions to the painted lines we heard about earlier on the street. There have recently been bike and bus lane demonstrations and pilots of this type in the Back Bay, Cambridge, Brookline here, Everett, Roslindale, Arlington, and more. In addition to the obvious climate benefits and aforementioned health and access benefits, these demonstratable and pilotable public way changes hold the potential to improve Brookline's service and retail business conditions and increase sales tax revenue by making commercial districts accessible to more people getting there via more modes. And they hold the potential to help support economically sustainable and inclusive growth by enabling more people to work and live in Brookline, and so increasing commercial real estate tax revenue and growing service and retail business patronage without proportional increases in traffic and vehicle parking congestion, in transportation, energy demand, and pollution. We in Brookline have the opportunity to re-embrace the best of human scale, more environmentally sustainable public way designs and development patterns of the past, while working to discard past racism, sexism, and xenophobia that were embedded. We have the opportunity to chart a course of civic policy and design regarding our public ways centered on people for the future. Thank you, and I'm going to hand it off to Scott to talk more about the article.
Thank you, Jules and Susan. Good evening, Select Board members. I'm Scott Englander, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6, and one of the many petitioners. And so thanks for this opportunity to talk about this warrant article with you. Now, Susan and Jules described the challenges that we're tackling and the vision that we're aiming toward. So I'm going to talk about the how does this resolution really address these issues. The resolution has three main components. The first are a set of high-level principles for action regarding transportation and land use. The second, goals and metrics and resources to begin to achieve them. And the third, a timeline to chart a course of action and report back to town meeting. The principles, I realize if we had rearranged them, we could have a handy acronym, which is APED. But basically, prioritize, demonstrate, align regulations, encourage electric vehicles. So talking about prioritize, this means that when we're designing and improving our public ways to prioritize safe, space-efficient, energy-efficient movement of people and goods over the movement of and parking of private vehicles, which have been prioritized for decades. The resolution calls for a focus on high-traffic routes and connectivity with particular consideration to equity of access and safety for everyone, as well as the use of healthful and sustainable transportation. Now, one of the big concepts is to demonstrate, pilot, and evaluate new public way configurations that enable everyone to use healthful and sustainable transportation. And this could mean low-cost trials or temporary events to demonstrate community benefits. Second, to align, the resolution calls for us to align our planning and zoning regulations with our historically less automobile-dependent development pattern. Third, encourage. The resolution calls for us to encourage transition of motorized travel to electric vehicles. And for example, that could mean support for increased electric vehicle charging. So let's talk about the goals. The resolution calls upon the select board and any other appropriate bodies to determine a course of action, applying these principles to work toward goals for 2050 and 2030. Now, forward-thinking cities and towns around the world have put in place goals or mandates quite similar to these, along these lines, many of which are much more aggressive. The resolution calls for us to work toward a 2050 mode split goal, which we call 75-25, where 75% of trips are by human power, electric micromobility, or electric shared rides, and that means transit as well. 25% of trips are by single occupant or single passenger electric cars or trucks. The resolution also calls for us to work toward a 2030 interim goal, where we achieve about 30% of the progress that we need to get to the 2050 goal, and also about 30% of the motor vehicles registered in Brookline are electric vehicles. Now, to realize these goals, we'll need a supportive infrastructure network, and that could include safe routes to schools, inclusive protected bike lanes for diversity of users, and electric vehicle charging facilities. What we can't measure, we can't achieve. And so the resolution calls for measuring and reporting progress. Now, Brookline's transportation staff is extremely lean by any standard and barely sufficient to manage and administer improvements to meet our current plans. So the resolution calls for establishing a sustainable transportation engineer or planner position to support these goals. Finally, the resolution calls for the select board and/or delegates to report on the details of this course of action by May 2020 town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so you know, that was about 14 minutes. Just as you're thinking about town meeting, you're going to have to ask for special permission from the moderator. So, board members, do you have questions, comments?
I'll just say that it was a pleasure to work with this group. I really was impressed with just how holistic everything that we kind of sought to address. It wasn't just about cars or bikes. It was really about where do we want to be and by when.
I'll ask, so I'm thinking about sort of the vision here, and I'm looking back at these old photos, which are, thank you for showing those to us. I'm thinking about the vision of protected bike lanes and dedicated bus lanes, and I'm also wondering, and I saw the figures in here that the expectations, hopefully, are that the number of cars will go down, at least in Brookline. Right now, the stats that I've seen are that there's an average of 1 car per household in Brookline, even though 20% of households don't have a car at all, including mine, which means that there's some folks out there with 2, 3, I even saw 4 cars, 429 households that have 4 cars. Good for you. My question is, particularly in our commercial areas, I'd love to see more preference for bikes and for buses, and not about getting vehicles through, but about getting people through these spaces. What do we do with those cars? Let's say if we wanted to move parking off of those streets, does this envision a world where we create space for cars to be in these commercial areas as folks come to want to shop and dine in the Brookline area? There's lots of scuttle going on right now.
Zoe orchestrating the response to this.
Hey, Linda.
Okay, well, hi, I'm Linda Olson-Pelkey. I am one of the co-petitioners on this. I don't want to speak for the whole group to answer this question, but I think there's 2 things we have to keep in mind. One, if we do need to move parking or have additional parking, it must be public shared parking. And I know we have in the past talked about the Center Street lot maybe being a deck or whatever. So it makes so much more sense to have public shared parking because multiple users use it, multiple businesses are served by it, patrons park once. So this is actually preview of Warrant Article 15. So thanks for the setup. And I also, you know, we talked a lot about this in the group. We had several members who thought we just need to get all the cars off of the streets. And personally, I don't agree with that. What I think we need to really start thinking about is certain roads are good for certain modes and other roads are better for other roads. I mean, I can envision having car-free roads and I can envision having car-only roads. So I just, you know, because we do have very limited space. We all know that, and that's why these conflicts arise. And I think we just, once we start making facilities that allow other modes to have equal access, we're going to see a shift, and that's the real goal. And how we get there is, you know, everybody working together to figure that out. I mean, we heard from Todd about when they redo roads, they put in the bike lanes. And so it's going to be determining where an appropriate network is, like where do the routes make sense? You can't just be arbitrary and think that every road needs everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my answer to your question.
Fair answer, thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Raul. If I could address another dimension of that answer. Right now, we provide massive subsidies for driving, such that, for example, if you and your partner wanted to go to dinner in Washington Square from, say, St. Mary's, it would cost you about $10 to take the T there and back. Whereas if you just drove, you could park for pretty much nothing. The meters shut down at 8 p.m. And originally parking meters were invented to manage demand. And we've lost sight of that. These days we just use them for revenue. And the prices are, they're not really dynamic enough to manage demand, and they're certainly too low in places and at certain times. And so before we even look to off-street parking and looking at expanding that supply, for example, we should really look at how we manage the curbside and manage curb space and manage parking supply and the signals we're sending to people to how they travel to our commercial districts.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and you know, I think it's notable that there's nothing about that in this warrant article. By the way, which I would have totally co-sponsored if you asked me. But I think part of maybe what that signals is that this is a conversation that has been testy over time in the past, questions about parking. But if we're going to take what you propose here seriously, I think we also have to address those questions as well. And I think we should take what you propose here seriously and also address those questions.
And the two bodies that really weigh into this are the Transportation Board and even this board. We set the parking rates ultimately.
Just to bring to the board's attention, I'm Zoe Lynn, the Town Sustainability Program Administrator, that the warrant packet has 6 sustainable transportation articles. A warrant, Article 31 that you're reviewing tonight, is the heart, setting a vision for the town in line with the Select Board's 2050 zero emissions goal. It was pulled, all those concepts in the warrant were pulled from the summit, things that were voted up and packaged and coordinated and integrated with staff feedback. And then we have 4 other warrants that came as a result of concepts that came from the summit, and they are kind of supporting Article 31. Some of them came directly through the working teams, and some just coincidentally, you know, just due to the conversation that was happening, came at the same time and were filed. So when you think about some of the questions you've just brought it up, some of them are other warrants that you will be seeing, and when you kind of pull the whole picture together in a very integrated, coordinated way, and hopefully as they come through, that'll make sense, and we can help highlight that more.
Do you want to list those 4 warrant articles just so we've got a sense that this is the hub that spokes are connected to?
Yeah, so 14, 15, 16, and 17 are related to EVs and scooters, and 14, parking. Linda Pelkey. So 14 is Scottinanians, 15 is Linda's and Paul's, 16 is the scooters. Heather Hamilton's a co-petitioner on that one, and then 17 is Scottinanians as well. You've heard one of them so far. You'll be hearing the other one, which is related to zoning, after the planning board, I believe, weighs in. And then 7 you heard this evening, talking about multimodal paints. That came not through the working teams, but is obviously in line with these concepts. And then 31 is the one in front of you.
Yeah. So I'll say that, you know, it's tough to be against this warrant article. It's sort of motherhood and apple pie. Like, of course we should have roadways and public ways that work for a variety of different users. And I'm totally comfortable installing infrastructure or making changes to promote things like EV. Where it gets difficult for me is in the detail. So when we talk about taking a particular road and deeming it most appropriate for non-motor vehicle traffic, that this should be a pedestrian corridor. Those are difficult conversations because it's got a tangible impact. You're saying motor vehicles, you can't drive down it. Businesses, you're now going to have to reimagine your delivery plan, or customers, you're going to have to park someplace else or access in a different way. And that's where it gets a little bit sticky. So I think this article, I appreciate. I think it's really is compelling, but I think we all just need to be prepared for more difficult conversations that follow on once there's implementation of this.
Yeah, so I think I've used this line before. So every step is one step, and there's more challenges to come. What you're talking about does require comprehensive planning, some feasibility studies, some neighborhood meetings. There's a lot more to come. This is just setting a vision so that staff have something to work with. We're working unified in the same direction. And then, but you're right, this is the fun part. And we have a lot more work to do. But this warrant allows staff, if passed, to start planning for it in the CIP, in their budgets, to start prioritizing, which we can't do without that direction. So this is, in a way, a policy, setting us up to have those conversations, and also setting us up to work together to achieve it.
And I appreciate that point. I mean, when I first read this now a couple of weeks ago and up to this past weekend, I was immediately going to the specifics. Like, what does this mean? And after having a couple of conversations, I came to realize that it's a little bit it's unfair to pin on the petitioners here. What are you going to do about Beacon Street, or how are you going to reimagine St. Mary's? Because it's a big question.
Yeah, those are
got very
separate.
complex
Yes.
answers, but it's also a conversation that really needs a whole bunch of stakeholders to weigh in. It needs to be a community conversation. So.
Yep, this is a 30-year vision in front of you, and many more details. You're exactly right. Many more details to come, needing to come, many more discussions. But the fact that you were interested in the details, it just tells me that you're a true blood Brookliner. So I feel confident that you are where you belong. I have somebody behind me.
Itching to get to the microphone.
So I appreciate your taking at least 2 reads of it to sort of see the multiple ways one could interpret what the article says. I wanted to follow up on the idea of managing parking demand, and also the idea of streets having different characters to them that Linda had mentioned. And the article does have a few carefully used phrases. It does specifically talk about the significance of high traffic routes. And I think that's important to note. Like, Brookline is not Manhattan with a street grid, and it is not Chicago with the street grid and the wide arterials that it has. We have in a lot of places, a set of roads that are the principal connective routes for all modes or most modes. And then we have a lot of great roads that are naturally traffic calmed or calmable. And so I think the bones that Brookline has already give us some sense about the idea of sort of more self-contained neighborhoods and more through travel routes. So I think that the article talks about the significance of that. And so it's an effort to acknowledge the idea that, and within that, it highlights the idea that there is this best practice that is really clearly emerging, coming from not just the sort of technocratic transportation planning folks, but from politicians at the state level, including our governor and this commission, about the idea of thinking about a metric of function in terms of people. And I think that is sort of like something that, as we engage with that principle and try to relate it to our streets, we will find it as an instrument for helping to structure those discussions. And I would like to draw attention this idea of the demonstrations and pilots. I think sometimes we've engaged in a process wherein we do a roadway design and we only talk about it at meetings at 7 p.m. once a design has been formulated. And so this article also encourages us to employ some community engagement methods integrated with both our visioning and our sort of concrete discussions about particular streets, so that maybe when we're undertaking some planning that incorporates multiple modes on a street that has limited right-of-way, that we can try out some of those options without committing to building them and get feedback and have folks participate, having tried a version of it, even if it's briefly and for a brief segment. So hopefully that will help.
So thank you for that. So I want to open up the public hearing here because we're running about an hour behind schedule. So those who have comments about Article 31, step up to the microphone. And you've heard my admonishment that we're approaching an hour behind schedule. So bear that in mind as you offer your comments.
Once again, I'm David Trevette, Chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, resident of Babcock Street, but speaking tonight for myself. I was part of the sustainability team that developed this warrant article, but actually I was out of town for almost all of the time that the work was being done. And when I returned and saw what had been produced, I was actually astonished that so many disparate voices had, after wrangling in meetings, many meetings, Zoe convened people all over and over again to deal with this and the many different facets of this, that so many disparate voices could come together and produce something that was cohesive was pretty amazing to me. And this is a town that seems almost, I don't know, pathologically averse to any kind of holistic planning. This is an opportunity. The fact that climate change is a crisis also gives us an opportunity to try to pull things together in a way that this town has not done so before. Transportation, as has already been pointed out, is a major part of what's driving emissions problems with the climate in this town. It's worth our attention, worth doing something. It's worth making it a high priority. So I urge you to give this strong support both now and in all the planning in the years ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Greetings again, Select Board. I'll keep it brief. I'm Linda Olson-Pelkey. I would say that we do need to grasp this inflection point that we're all feeling around climate change and realize that we need to do something about our transportation thinking and planning here in Brookline. And, you know, we're trying to add density, we're adding housing. It cannot all be so car dependent. We will be shooting ourselves in the foot in terms of what makes Brookline a livable place right now and what could make it even better in the future. I tell people that I moved here because of the Green Line, and they look at me like I'm crazy. But that is literally how I chose Brookline. I needed to get to work. I didn't want to drive. What am I going to do? I chose Brookline. And a lot of people do. And I just want to say, I think there is hope. We have been making progress. We have been putting in, you know, I mean, I love those crosswalks on Babcock. My community garden is across Babcock. I walk through that neighborhood several times a week. People actually see me and stop. It's amazing. And it used to be so threatening just across that street. So I love that. And you know, I think I did put some data in the explanation because I think it shows that we have made some positive change and that there is potential. So in 2000, 45% of the people who live and work somewhere else, they live in Brookline, they're going to work, 45% drove alone in a car. And now in 2017, the census is telling us it's 35%. 35% mode share in single occupancy vehicle is really good. Mm-hmm. Also, the number of people who are walking has really gone up. And so we all know about the problems with capacity on the T, although I went to a fascinating meeting about that, and they really are working on it, and they claim they're going to improve capacity by 15%. Let's hope that really happens. But so Also, the number of households without cars that you were mentioning, Raul, it's actually now up to 26% of households do not own a car. And that's because it's possible to do that. It's also possible to use your car less. And so the more we do to make other modes comfortable, we're helping people who have no other way to travel be safer and feel able to access where they need to get. And we're giving opportunities to those who don't have them now. And I think that's super important. So I hope that we really embrace this vision and work hard to put it into effect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Krupp. I live on Osborne Road in Brookline. I was part of the sustainability working group on transportation. First, I just want to thank Zoe for her work on this. I honestly believe she's one of the best things that has happened to Brookline in all the years I've been living here. Her energy level, her intelligence, her ability to gather different points of view and integrate them is really impressive. I'm in favor, of course, of the warrant article, and I guess the main point I would ask you to focus on is, unlike most conversations about climate change, which are extremely dreary and depressing, and there doesn't seem to be any good solution, and we're all being forced to make changes and compromises which we really don't want to make, but just have to because of this horrible situation we find ourselves in. On this particular question, all we heard were good things. Things that will actually improve our lives. Will be increasing economic opportunity for people who can't afford a car and have more opportunities to work in different places that they might not have otherwise been able to get to. It's also an economic opportunity for businesses in Brookline. People who aren't burdened by $12,000 a year car payments have a lot more money to spend in the local economy. One thing that I just noticed today, which I was thinking about on the Facebook Brookline discussion page, somebody posted that their children, 12-year-old child was playing in Emerson Park and without their parents present, and the resident demanded to know who their parents were, walked them back to their home and said, "You are neglectful, you're guilty of child neglect for the fact that you're not accompanying your child to the park." And this is just another illustration of this car-oriented society we live in. I mean, in a country like the Netherlands, 12-year-old children go by themselves to the park. They do not need to be accompanied. And I think that this is just another illustration of the quality of life possibilities here. And I think the main point is we have the bones. We have what everyone wants, which unfortunately in some ways is why we're so expensive. But most communities couldn't do what we can do because the development patterns make it very difficult. But we have the opportunity right now. So I hope you'll support the warrant article.
Thank you.
My name is Jacob Meunier. I'm a resident of William Street in Coolidge Corner, Brookline. I'm also a member of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, but I'm speaking on my own behalf tonight. I also wanted to lend my support to this warrant article. I think it's wonderful. I think as it's just been said, it is actually very uplifting and a very positive thing. And if we can't do it now, with all we know about global warming, when can we do it? This is the time. I wanted to leave you with one new sort of idea or nugget based on my own experience as a teacher of economics. I was most recently teaching at Newbury College. Something happened to that last year. And this is the idea of marginalism, and making decisions on the margin, as economists call it. It's an idea that goes back to a 19th century economist named William Stanley Jevons. The idea is that rational humans make decisions on the margins. What causes the least pain or provides the most amount of pleasure incrementally in any given decision. How does that work in transportation? You walk outside the door and you decide the streets are sort of crowded and mean and the sidewalks are broken and narrow, and you decide, I'm going to drive. Or you decide you'll take your bike. for a shorter distance because there's a nice pleasant street there, or you will walk. But the decisions that we make on a daily basis in a place like Brookline, are we going to walk, are we going to bike, are we going to drive, are often made on the margins. And it depends not only on the distance that we're traveling, but on the safety that we feel, the sort of the pleasantness we feel of the street around us. And I think that's important when we start worrying about things like, oh, where will we park if we remove parking? Where will people park? Well, the answer is people make decisions on the margins. People will always still choose to drive. Fewer of them will drive. That's probably a good thing, is what we're saying. Improve the sidewalks, improve accessibility, repaint crosswalks, bike lanes, more people will walk and bike. And so these incremental changes is, I think, what this is all about, and setting targets makes it a particularly sort of inspirational sort of goal to chase, because you can look year after year, you can see, are we incrementally changing people's decisions with some policies? So I think that's where we're headed with this idea of marginalism, marginal decision making. I think it's very important, and that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to change people's thinking on the margins as we go forward about the transportation choices they make. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Christy Electris, resident of Parkvale and town meeting member of Precinct 7. So I spoke to you a moment ago about a very specific kind of fix of our current system, but I wanted to strongly support having a vision, and for the select board and the community, the town, to support a vision of what Brookline could look like. I just want to bring one point up, which is the transformation of Amsterdam, which many people may know is a very bike and pedestrian friendly place, happened in about 50 years, or less than 50 years ago. In the 1970s, the policymakers took a 180-degree switch on how they viewed transportation policy, and 20 years after that, they had decreased their car usage to 38%. Today, it's less than 25%. And their town engineers and traffic department just kept experimenting, and we will make mistakes and we'll make things better, but their community and their ability to get around and walk around is ever changed. And I hope that you'll all lead us in that direction. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Jan Preheim, and I live on Walnut Street, and I was part of the group that worked on this warrant. And I'm going to be brief because so many people have said so many great things, but I'll say that this warrant is bold, it's brave, and it's doable, and I hope that you vote for it.
Thanks.
My name's Karen Wergland. I live on Winchester Street, and I'm going to keep it short also. I'm fully in support of warrant Article 31, and my only problem with it and with all of our climate actions right now is that the information that's coming at us from the media in the last year is telling us that the polar ice is melting faster than expected. I think climate change is going to happen faster than expected, and a 2050 goal is not soon enough. So as thoughtful and sensible, reasonable and rational as we need to be, we also need to move quickly. So I hope we can do this and do it fast. Thank you.
Bob Miller, 19 Copley Street. I ask everybody in the room to watch 5 minutes of Greta Thunberg talking to the United Nations. She can say it better and with more passion than I ever could.
Hello, Scott Nanian, town meeting member of Precinct 10 and a co-petitioner. This is a two-Scott warrant article. I'm also going to be brief. I'd like to sort of endorse the compromise that this sets between the non-car and car factions in town, which I think started out on the transportation working group, perhaps not entirely seeing eye to eye. And I'm going to credit Jules to first formulating the structure which appears in this warrant article that allows us to share goals. Right, the goal is to increase the efficiency of transport and electrify the remaining vehicles in town. And that's a goal we can all get together. We can all get behind together as a town, and I think that's an important step. So, as a representative of the EV side of the transportation working group, I'd like to endorse this warrant article officially. Thank you.
Thanks.
My name's Willie Osborne, and I'm from Emerson Garden area.
here in Brookline Village, and I just want to draw your attention to the dual nature of this warrant article, that it expresses a vision, and it also has some very real targets, both interim and final targets. And I think those are very important, both of those things, the vision and the targets, because we have a lot of work to do, if you pass it, as I wish you will. We have a lot of work to do to reach those targets, and the fact that targets are there will make our work easier when we go out for funding to the private sector and to the government and foundation sector for pilots, for incentives, for other things that we need to do to implement these things. Thank you very much.
My name is John Bowman. I am a co-petitioner. I was on the group that developed this. I want to express my strong support for it. I don't have any content to add to what's been well said. All I want to do is reinforce the goal: 75-25 by 50 and 30-30 by 30.
Thank you. We'll take that as the last word and close the public hearing. Final comments from the board. Okay. Seeing none, we'll hold off on this, taking a vote on this article for tonight, and we'll bring it up at a future meeting for a vote, presumably with our chair present. Right. Thank you. With that, we're going to move on to our next agenda item, and I will begin by apologizing for the fact that we are now 68 minutes behind schedule for our 8 o'clock public hearing. So the first of our public hearings tonight on licensing matters is for an application for an all kinds common victual license for Boston Food and Beverage LLC, or excuse me, Brookline Food and Beverage LLC, doing business as Emerald Bar, and that's at the new hotel that's under construction at 700 Brookline Avenue. Is there anybody here for that application? I think I see Ms. Duff approaching the podium. So this is for a CV license and a all kinds alcohol license as well.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. I'm Shana Gallinat from the Law Office of Robert Allen, and I'm here on behalf of Brookline Food and Beverage LLC, doing business. Sorry, I don't know what that feedback is. As Emerald Bar, and with me is John Mitchell. He's the proposed manager of record, as well as Rick Roberto, who's our proposed alternate manager. They both have spoken with Lieutenant Hayes ahead of this hearing, and they're familiar with the rules and regulations of this board, as well as the ABCC. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So let me start with just some housekeeping items. I think the original application was for 92 seats. The building department has said zoning only allows 76. And I want to note that I believe this is a geographically restricted license, which means it's tied to this particular address and can't be transferred or given to another entity. Is that?
It's tied to Brookline Village, certainly, and my understanding is that it would go back to the town if we were to not want it anymore.
Okay. So I will start with my common question, which is, tell me about the conversation you had with Lieutenant Hayes and what some of the Brookline-specific regulations are on the service of alcohol.
Sure. I think the key takeaways were making sure that we keep the binder behind the bar. He said that was very important, that when they come in to do their inspections, that's going to be the first thing that they ask for, and listed everything that needs to be included in that binder in terms of the roster of the employees that are working there, certifications that they're going to need, and obviously that that needs to be presented anytime somebody comes in. I think that was a real key takeaway. Making sure that the employees that we have working have the proper certification, the TIP certification, which I understand Brookline needs to be done as an in-person certification. It was, he gave me, we went through the whole document. He had actually given me a highlighted copy, which was great.
Perfect. You passed the test. I will just say that we take the service of alcohol very seriously here in the town of Brookline, and we do send underage individuals into establishments that have liquor licenses, and we try and trick you, and I hope that we don't see you back here for an enforcement hearing in the future, so.
You won't.
Could you just describe your identification policy? Who do you ID? Who do you ask to see an ID? Do you guess at their age, or what do you do?
Sure, yeah, we would ID anybody who looks to be 40 or younger. You know, even somebody in their late 30s is still going to be asked to see ID. And it's got to be the Massachusetts ID or the passport, which is spelled out in the pamphlet I got from Lieutenant Hayes.
Quick question: Would this Emerald Bar essentially serve as the lobby bar for the hotel?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And I've been to a lot of hotels. In some hotels, the lobby bar just services the clientele that stay at the hotel, maybe a couple other folks that stop by.
Right.
Others, I don't know, do promotions and have events and things like that. Do you have a sense of what kind of bar this will be?
Yeah, essentially the bar is an amenity for the guests of the hotel. Okay. Obviously, guests can come from the outside if they're not staying there and drink, but we're not looking to promote it as a place for people necessarily to come. It's really an amenity for our guests who are staying in the hotel.
Okay, helpful, thank you.
So I'll piggyback on that question, and I noticed that you're not applying for an entertainment license, so I just want to make sure that you don't have a plan to have radio or TV or live
there
music.
There are TVs in the lobby area. There's going to be a TV, and I realize that would be, for the TV, we would need an entertainment license. But we're certainly not looking to have any live entertainment or anything like that.
Okay.
If the TV or radio is for the premises of the, that's regulated by this license, you should apply for a license.
Yes.
Please.
Okay. All right, final comments? This is not a public hearing.
No, this is a public
hearing. This is a public hearing. I was still going to take public comment, or if anybody's here to speak on these particular license applications. Seeing no rush to the microphone, I will make a couple of motions here. I will move approval of the application of an all-kinds common victual license for Brookline Food and Beverage LLC, doing business as Emerald Bar at 700 Brookline Avenue. Proposed manager of record, John Mitchell Jr. Hours of operation, Monday to Saturday, 11 a.m. to 12 a.m., and Sunday, 12 p.m. to 12 a.m., for seating for 76. And I will further move approval of the application for the alternate manager, Richard Roberto, for Brookline Food and Beverage LLC, doing business as Emerald Bar at 700 Brookline Avenue. And note that pre-opening inspections are required by Health and Fire, just because the building's under construction. So all those in favor, Select Person Hamilton, or Heller, excuse me.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. I was going in alphabetical order. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next up is an application for a new food vendor license from Planet Eats Fairhaven, doing business as Planet Eats Brookline. Well, again, I apologize, we're behind schedule.
It's okay.
So tell us what you're hoping to do here.
So we produce healthy food for people. We view food as medicine, so it's 100% gluten-free, no sugar, no flour, no dairy. We have several locations in Massachusetts already. So we produce food in our one location, then we bring it to our stores. Basically making a way to bring healthy food to the mass public in a quick and easy grab-and-go situation. So nothing's prepared in location. We prepare it in our facility, then we bring it to like our other locations. So people can just walk in, or basically like your healthy personal chef. So we believe that you shouldn't have inflammation. We can get people off of pills if they take care of their gut health and what nutrition the effects are for their body. We do like nutritional programs, metabolic testing, things like that too. So we can explain to you your energy sources, what's going on, and if you're on medication, we can really break it down and you can start to listen to what your body's telling you as far as what you're doing so you don't continue to, we call it like poisoning your body with processed foods and sugars and stuff that wreaks havoc to you.
So I'll start with a couple of housekeeping things, and then I'll ask you a question or two.
Sure.
So this is a food vendor license, which means no sit-down, no seats. It's all sort of walk-in and carry-out. So I just want to
So
make
yeah,
sure.
mostly I was actually discussing that with Di today and the Board of Health.
Mhm.
And basically, we have a few seats outside and a few seats inside. But basically, what he said is we're going to put in a hand sink so people can wash their hands, and then they'll be able to just heat up their food in the microwave if we so choose to. But most of the stuff is just grab and go and take out.
So I'm not the
Yeah.
licensing guru.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not a common victualer's license, which means this does not allow people to eat in.
Okay.
I
That was
believe-
just what I was going through. What he
And I
told
believe
me
that's,
today.
related to the size of the location and the zoning and the code requirements for such a thing. But let me check with the health department just to make sure we're clear on what the limitations are, but.
Thank you.
So we'll follow up with you.
Sure.
So Mike, you mentioned that you prepare in other establishments and then bring into Brookline. So that leads me to ask, where are these deliveries going to take place? Do you have a dedicated space? Are you going to pull up on the street and just unload out of the back of a truck or a van? How is that going to work?
So we have there's a back parking lot
Okay.
to the building.
So just
Correct
Which
answer.
building is this on,
It's 1038 Beacon Street.
okay, remind me where that is? I mean, I
So
know
it's
it's
like 2
not
doors
near
down
Cor.
from like the Whole Foods, right on
Okay.
Beacon.
Yep.
Right, okay.
Yeah, a few doors down from there.
So by St. Mary's here. Okay. So pull in the parking lot, load in from the rear of the establishment.
Yeah, there's like an alleyway that we can walk right around with.
St. Mary's Court. Yep.
That's what it's called?
It is.
Did not know that.
All right. Other questions?
Yeah. I'm still trying to, I read through everything before and I was still trying to imagine, like, the food is prepared, it's brought in. How fresh is the food? Meaning, if I go to shop there tomorrow, if this place was open, did that food just arrive that day? Has it been there for a few days?
So we do projections, like, the food lasts 7 days.
7
But we do
days.
our projections over like a 3-day period. So we basically run out, as we run out, we replenish. So we cook like 4 or 5 times a week.
Okay. And these are also, you mentioned sort of a microwave before, which I don't know if that's going to happen, but these are foods that either can be eaten cold or that need to be warmed up?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're already prepared for you.
Okay.
Just trying to make people's lives easier.
Right. I think it's almost like a freshly, but you go pick it up instead of having stuff delivered to your apartment or one of those.
Yeah, so
Right.
we started off I started off as the Healthy Grill in 2002 and evolved, and then in 2010 people started asking us to cook for them for the week, and it kind of evolved from there. So it's high quality restaurant food, just put it in containers, so you can make sure you get all the nutrients. Because if you were to cook, you're supposed to be rotating your proteins, rotating your vegetables on a weekly basis, not the same thing. So basically we allow you to be able to do that, so you can optimize your health.
I don't
know
know what
a
you're talking
lot of
about. I'm putting all
people-
kinds of toxins in my body. I should probably go there. Thanks.
We can sit down if you'd like to.
I was thinking,
Yeah.
I feel attacked.
Sorry,
All right.
it wasn't directed towards you. But if you feel guilty, you might want to look at that.
So, what is your knowledge of the packaging rules in Brookline, since you're gonna be doing so much takeout?
So we went over everything. He gave me like all the labeling sheets today. I had a meeting at 4 o'clock with the Inspector Di, and then we went over everything that we needed to.
So, what kind of plastic are you gonna eliminate?
Plastic, are we going to eliminate?
Are you not gonna use?
We the only plastic that we use is curbside recyclable.
Okay.
And he gave us all the other numbers that are going to be eliminated: the 1, the 3, the 6, I believe, in the future. We went over all that too.
Well,
We-
6 has been banned for,
Yeah.
7 years, so.
Yeah, we went over all those today.
And, okay.
Are there members of the public that wish to speak towards this application? Again, seeing no rush to the microphone, I will move approval of the application for a new food vendor license for Planet Eats Fairhaven, doing business as Planet Eats Brookline at 1038 Beacon Street, hours of operation Monday to Sunday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much. You're all
Thanks so
set.
much.
We'll be in touch
Good luck.
about that question of
yeah,
CV versus food vendor.
All right, perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you guys so much. Have a
Thank
great
you for
evening.
waiting.
Next up is an application for a new common victual license for Diddy Beacon Street, Brookline, doing business as Dumpling Daughter.
Hi.
Welcome. Again, we're sorry we're behind schedule, so.
Oh, no, these things happen all the time. This is my third planning board meeting in 4 years, so.
Okay.
I'm very excited to be here. It really is an honor. Brookline is a town that actually is very close to my family because it's the first city that my mom lived in before she met my father, and she opened her first restaurant in Boston as a resident of Brookline in 1978. So here we are. I started Dumpling Daughter in 2014. Our first location was launched in Weston Center, and it's been really well received. It's been just a great experience. We're hitting our 5-year mark this November, and we just signed a new lease for another 5 years. Last year, we launched in Kendall Square, Cambridge, and we've had a great year. I'm sorry, this is our CFO partner, Stephen Liam Patrick. And so we've been, in business for 5 years total, 1 year in Kendall, and now we're just very excited to be expanding to Brookline. I think it's a city that is kind of like a hybrid of Weston and Cambridge. And hopefully we'll fill a nice niche here and be well received as well.
Great, thank you. So just a couple of housekeeping items. I think you had initially requested 49 seats, and the building department came back and said that current zoning only allows 25 seats.
So the occupancy is 49. The seating is actually 38. Originally, when we had applied for the building permit, the gentleman, Joe, is it Joe? Yeah, he said that it shouldn't be a problem. Before, it was 25 seats for 16 handles prior to us. So, we'd be happy to reapply for the extra 13 seats, whatever is necessary by all of you. But Joe said that he didn't seem to see a problem with it. But, I'd be happy to apply for more.
So this is the situation we have. I see a memo from the building department dated earlier this month that says the establishment is currently used as a restaurant and conforms with the pertinent provisions of the state building code, so on and so forth, with a maximum seating capacity of 25 seats and not the 49 seats requested by the applicant. So that's the information the board got. So I think what we should do tonight is just take the 25 and we can continue the conversation with the building department, and we can bring you back if in fact the seats in excess of 25 is what's allowed. And we
Okay,
can do
yeah,
it that way.
because the drawings actually show 38 seated.
Okay.
And then 49 occupancy, including the staff.
Okay.
So 38 would be the number that we would want. And yeah,
Okay.
we're happy to come back after you discuss with building.
So we'll take that as a homework assignment for this board and for staff, and we'll get back in touch with you with a definitive answer about 25 versus 38.
Okay.
And then the second bit of clarification is I see the original application requested BYOB, but my understanding is you've withdrawn that part. So we're not talking about alcohol being served. Is
Yeah,
that-
we did talk to the chief of police, and he did express the seriousness of BYOB in Brookline. We only applied for it because it's been really successful in Weston. A few tables here and there a week enjoy it, a couple more on the weekends, but it's usually parents with kids, and that's what we imagined it to be more of in Brookline. But it's definitely more serious here than in Weston, and so we didn't want to delay the application process because it's an added value for the clients, but it's really not really that beneficial for us, so we just decided to withdraw that.
Okay.
The primary concern there was that, in speaking with the lieutenant, we understood that although it's a fast casual, you order at the register, the food is brought to you. All employees beyond the cooks would be required to be tip certified. And the concern, that's not the case in Weston. The concern is that where we have generally high turnover and a tight labor market, that would be challenging for us to keep up and be able to say we could do it.
Do board members have questions?
I just wanted to say to you that I used to frequent Sally's restaurants in the one in the harbor, in the hotel in Cambridge. That
Oh,
was
yes,
on
at the
Memorial
Hyatt
Drive.
Regency.
Yeah, and,
Yeah. Thank
and
you.
also Ed's Restaurant in Newton.
Thank you, that's my
Yeah,
late
your
father.
dad, I
yeah.
know.
Thank you,
Both
Nancy.
very good, we liked them very much.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
We keep getting noodles and like soup. I'm all about the dumplings, so I'm very excited.
Right.
Plus,
Awesome.
you know, that location has sat vacant and right next to Trader Joe's. I'm so glad that something's going in there.
Yeah, we've had our eye on Brookline for quite a while, and, you know, my mom always said, move cautiously and don't rush and take your time, and I think that that's the right location. It's so accessible, and right next to Trader Joe's. We found a lot of good luck next to Brothers and Weston, so we like being in supermarket anchored centers.
Nice.
I'll just say the menu looks amazing. The prices are spot on, and I live in the area, and you can expect to see a lot of me there.
Thank you.
Dumplings and buns. Let's go.
Members of the public that wish to speak either for or against this application? All right, the silence is deafening. I will move approval of the application of a new common victual license for DD Beacon Street Brookline LLC, doing business as Dumpling Daughter at 1309 Beacon Street, with a proposed manager of Nadia Spellman. Hours of operation will be Monday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m., and we're not going to worry about the alcohol hours, and there'll be seating for 25. And the request, I'll move favorable action or approval of the request for an application for a new entertainment license for DD Brookline, DD Beacon Street Brookline LLC, doing business as Dumpling Daughter at 1309 Beacon Street, radio playing Monday to Sunday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we'll
Thank
get
you
back
very
to you
much.
with that seating question.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
And finally, we have a application for a new CV license for Super Rich Incorporated, doing business as Tai Tai Kitchen at 6 Cypress Street.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Pushong Oranfong. This is my wife, Marisa Bunakishkan. We are actually working on a 6 Cypress Street as a pineapple right now. Her mom actually owned that one, this is Josh. He's her mom husband. So we kind of family business right now, and now we're changing the name because we got a lot of confusion between this location and new location. So we're gonna take over on this one permanently. So now we apply for the silver license for 10 seat and a change of ownership and the name of the restaurant.
So the only thing that's changing here is
Just the name of the
is the
restaurant.
name of the restaurant. Everything else is going to
The
stay
same,
the same.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it used to be for 4 years Pineapple Thai Cuisine. I was here, you know, and we got this, we started as a vendor, we got a city license. Now we moved to Chestnut Hill. Now that's my daughter, her husband. They took over, they're doing a great job.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with this location, perhaps too familiar. It seems pretty straightforward. It looks like the hours of operation are going to stay the same seating. This is it's a sort of tight quarter, so delivery is always an issue, but having run this a restaurant in this establishment, you're well aware of that. Questions, comments, concerns?
Nope, no alcohol.
I This is a public hearing, or I'm going to make it a public hearing. Does anybody have any comments? All right, seeing no members of the public that wish to speak to this application, I will move approval of the application for a new CV license for Super Rich Incorporated, doing business as Tai Tai Kitchen at 6 Cypress Street. Hours of operation will be Monday to Thursday, 11:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m., Friday and Saturday, 11:30 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sunday, 3:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., with seating for 10. And I'll also move approval of the application for a new entertainment license for Super Rich Incorporated, doing business as Tai Tai Kitchen at 6 Cypress Street, radio and television playing 7 days a week. Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Select Person Fernandez.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for waiting.
Well, we get used to the late hour. Thank you.
And that concludes our business for this evening.
Congratulations, Ben, on a well-run meeting.
We were on track for a while.